Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Scituate's Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015. I'd like to call this meeting to order and have an acceptance of a revised agenda.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded
Second.
by Ms. Curran. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Folks, thank you very much for coming this evening. We have walk-ins. Are there any walk-ins? Sure. Can you please come on up and state your name?
Up there.
Yep, right up here.
My name is Gordon Ricketts. I live at 18 Clover Lane. I am a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service in North Scituate. And I came here 2 meetings ago, but I was late, not knowing that walk-ins were first. I thought walk-ins were last. So I came in the last meeting. The meeting was postponed or moved up to 6 o'clock, as it is tonight. So I finally, third time's a charm, I guess. So I'm here, basically, public safety. That first meeting I came to, you had everybody here and talking about having cut the power, which was a very bold move, I thought. North Scituate, that's my work area. This is your work area. The cleanup from the storms has been, well, not that great in my eyes. And the train crossing, the train crosses there, we know, and they've had problems with the MBTA, we all know. The sidewalks around that whole area, the gates, all four Country Way, Henry Turner, Gannett Road. The Henry Turner side is 2 lanes. It's only 1 lane. It's never been cleaned. Booth Hill, I walk up Booth Hill to get to 757 Country Way. I walk in the street constantly. The crosswalks are not cleaned out. They're a little lower now because the sun's been out, so you don't have to step over or walk around the whole islands. There's 4 islands there. The sidewalk from 765 Country Way towards Cohasset, which goes to Lincoln Park, senior housing, it's never been done. Many of my customers that live there walk to North Scituate. They have to walk on the road. People that live in 5 Bound Brook have to walk on the road. It's very unsafe. I feel that I'm exposed enough that people pay attention to me, but people drive by me very fast. When I'm in my mail truck, people don't yield. People just have to get around me. You know the roads out there, they're not very wide. People still drive by, they don't even think of yielding, they just go right over. It's very sad what I see every day. I deliver mail on Country Way. You know, the bad corner between, let's say, Manlot and the old library, Myron Bullock's house, that corner. People go around me like nothing. I've seen many close, almost head-ons. And this is on normal days, not with the snow out here.
Gordon, are those the sidewalks you're talking about, or you're talking about just the road itself?
Just the road itself.
Okay.
Just people, not heeding to, us delivering the mail. We've done our best out there to get the mail delivered. There's been a lot of complaints about I don't have my mail. Well, my road personally is 1 lane. It's all pretty much ice, except yesterday they put down sand. So there's a little bit of melting going on, but I have a sidewalk. I live across the street from Wampatuck School. They did the sidewalk on Edith Holmes, but they've never done the sidewalk on Clover Lane. They just cleaned up Village Lane. Village Lane was atrocious. There's a large cul-de-sac at the end of that road. It's finally a cul-de-sac again. It wasn't a cul-de-sac at all. You couldn't turn a car around that unless you did a 10-point turn. But my basic reason for being here is North Situate Village. I'd like to see it cleaned up.
So, Gordon, just so that I know you said Booth Hill Road, the crosswalks on Country Way in particular, I think around the train crossing is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
And I know you said 765 Country Way heading to Lincoln Park, Bound Brook and the sidewalks. Have you or has anybody contacted DPW requesting it? I only ask that because, obviously, as you know, with all the snow and the roads, widening of the roads, and there are other, with the snowstorms with the schools and widening, a lot of people have been calling, and DPW's been pretty responsive, trying to get out there. Not the next day, but at least trying to get out there within the next 2 to 3 days. And I'm just asking that if you have any knowledge.
No, I did not call because
Okay.
I figured it would get done. Now, it's been a month. I was going to mention this a month ago, but I already told you what had happened. And nothing's been done. It's still the same. Now,
I can certainly tell you, that's why I'm writing this down. We'll talk to DPW, Kevin's not here, to have them take a look at that and see what they can do to clear it. You know, and if you want Clover Lane and Village Lane, we can certainly ask them to get to the sidewalks. I presume, and I'm not answering for them, given the fact that Edith Holmes is a two-way street, Clover Lane is a cul-de-sac, that they probably said, we're going to do Edith Holmes and try to get that. And for whatever reason, I don't know why they didn't get to Clover Lane, at least at some point. But we can certainly ask them to do it and get to it. Obviously, we have a snowstorm coming tonight. It's not going to be a big one, my understanding. Thursday's the one that's coming down with 6 to 8 inches. So, I mean, obviously, those are major concerns. But we know after Sunday's storm, it's beginning to melt. So these storms that we're facing, I think, are pretty much in the rear mirror. But it's the stuff that's left over that certainly we can address and get to. That certainly has been a problem for the past month.
Yeah.
We're not aware of it. Obviously, we are now. We'll see what we can do to get it taken care of.
My biggest concern was basically the sidewalks from Lincoln Park down.
Yep.
But
I agree.
This isn't a one-time thing either. I mean, I've been delivering mail in this town many years, and it's always a problem, no matter how much snow we get. This is exceptional, I understand that, but it's never been touched or looked at or anything. I went to the dump yesterday, and I just happened to take a ride around Greenbush, because the last one of the meetings I was here, they were here about the 40R
Yep.
building the
Down at
whatever
the
they-
MBTA station
Right.
parking lot, yeah.
And if you put that in, and the people want to walk to the train station, you can't even walk to the train station from your office.
No, I know, there are a lot of
That-
mounds.
That sidewalk that goes from your office up
Not even
over the
existent.
bridge,
Right.
all the snow is there.
Right.
So it's not just the village, but that's where I work. That's where I have to put on my little yak tracks and walk around on the ice and deliver the mail, which I enjoy.
I know that once the season is over with snow, that it was the plan of the board to maybe sit down and think about, given the magnitude of snow and the amount, but still, the prospect that this could be an ongoing issue annually, to address certainly multitude of issues, but of which you're mentioning is the cleaning of the sidewalks. I know one of the issues we had was there was a breakdown of one of the sidewalk, I call it the bombardier, but it was like a snowblower. We finally were able to get a new replacement for it with a Bobcat, and that was working this past weekend with a snowblower component to it. So that kind of delayed the sidewalk removal. But nonetheless, it's certainly going to continue to be a very snowy winter, I anticipate, for the futures. And I think this board is of the opinion that we need to maybe take a look at the sidewalk removal as best we can on the priorities. So we'll see what we can do. But I will certainly make a point of get it through Tricia and through Kevin Cafferty, the DPW director, those streets that you referenced, to make sure they can get cleared.
Yeah, Village Lane is done, but my street's not so good. But,
I mean, the only thing I'd say is, it wasn't because of lack of effort. I mean, these people have been out for a long time, working many, many hours, getting a lot of streets cleared. So, you know, there definitely are areas, yours, there's stuff by me, probably stuff by all of us that are in difficult shape here. But in the future, I just say, if you see an area that's a safety concern, you know, call DPW, and if the sidewalk from Lincoln Park hasn't been addressed, then they'll see if that goes up on the priority list. I know the schools were the most priority initially,
Right.
and the tracks to them, but,
you can't walk from Mary Lou's around the corner without being in the street. You can't walk at all on that side, and you can't walk from Dottie's up Booth
I-
Hill Road.
yeah, there's,
So it doesn't, it's not my eyes. I mean, Mr. Harris, I know, is out there every day working, and he sees it.
It's everywhere. I mean, you're naming,
I
you're
know.
naming 10 streets, and I bet if you turn around, everybody behind you could name 10 others, so,
But it's, I mean, the first storm, I want to end it, but the first storm, a car had slid into a crossing in Hingham. You know, we luckily haven't had any of those problems, but the issue exists that sidewalk has never been touched. The 4 storms that we've had, the crosswalks have the crossings, the island crossings, you know what I'm talking about? You have the island, and then in the middle is an opening for the crosswalk
Right.
from the one side. They've never been touched,
Yep.
not once. I know North Situate was cleaned after the first storm, but since then, they've never been touched. But those islands were never touched.
I think
I'm there
it-
every day.
Well, all right. We'll, Gordon, no, I appreciate it. We'll get in touch with them and see what I'll do, if I can't get to Kevin tonight, first thing tomorrow morning, to make sure.
Believe me,
that
this
we're-
was the last place I wanted to come.
I saw you come in one time and you walked in and walked out, and I was like,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
any other walk-ins? Seeing none, we're going to actually bump the town administrator's report at this point, just to have another agenda item. I think, Dave, you're here on behalf of the, David Ball, that is, on behalf of the article? Is that correct? So we're going to jump down to what was listed under 6:30 discussion, special town meeting and annual town meeting non-monetary articles, and in particular, 3 other articles, and it's 3A, which is the special town meeting, wait, is it 3A, the special town meeting?
I think you're reading it right, isn't that it?
I take that back. 1, articles by petitioner, 1A. It's a petition to appropriate $2 million for seawall, David Ball. Quote, "To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds in the treasurer the sum of $2 million for the purpose of repairing, restructuring, reconstructing, or maintaining existing foreshore protection structures in the town of Scituate." David, good
Good
evening.
evening, how are you? I have with me tonight Bill Graham, who's going to carry on for me in a couple of minutes. I have to be down at the community building on Jericho Road. We're doing a program at 6:30 in the Blizzard of 78 for the CRS committee, so I can't spend a whole lot of time here, but I can get it started anyway, and then Bill will carry on from where I leave off. All right, so thank you, John, for reading the article. That saves a little bit. We are coming to town meeting with a $2 million request for seawall reconstruction or maintaining existing seawalls in the town. These are public seawalls that we're talking about. The coastline of Scituate is 21 miles long. 7 miles of that length is protected by various types of foreshore protection. Last year, we met with the board for a similar article that we took to town meeting. And we were concerned last year because the 2011 foreshore evaluation report that was paid for by the town showed that there was about $55 million worth of seawall and other foreshore protection work that was needed to bring everything up into good condition. As of the 2011 report, by the way, about 75% of all foreshore protection structures in the town were considered to be either in fair, poor, or failed condition. Now we're here 1 year later, and things aren't really any better. They're actually worse. And we are grateful for some of the work that has been done, but obviously much more has to be done. We believe that the $2 million is actually a very conservative amount of money. If now the actual cost to repair everything is escalated up to, say, $70 million, $2 million a year being spent would mean that it's going to take 35 years to get it done, which is obviously not going to work either. We do have some Cantwell money that's going to be coming into play, but still, there's a lot of work that has to be done. And these repairs are going to have to start very soon, because otherwise the town is going to get so far behind that we'll never catch up. You know, things will just get worse and worse. On January 27th of this year, we had a storm that caused another breach in the seawall where Turner Road and Oceanside Drive meet. It was about a 10 or 15 or 20-foot section of wall that came down in addition to the wall that came down 2 years ago. That produced an awful lot more flooding in the Sand Hills area than it should have. I was talking to a person today, and he was saying that he's well away from the water, way down on Jericho Road, and he had water within a half an inch of his first floor. That never should have happened, but it's because of that breach. Obviously, if there's a hole in the wall, much more water is going to get through than it should. That storm that we had in January of this year also undermined about 120 feet of seawall on Oceanside Drive. That's a new problem as well. And obviously, once the seawall becomes undermined, there's very little you can do to keep it stable in the future. The town did a good job, by the way, of backfilling against that wall right after the storm to try to stabilize it, but it's a temporary fix, obviously. There's another huge problem on Edward Foster Road, across from the Town-owned Marina. That seawall on Edward Foster Road is about 120, 140-foot section of it that has failed, and now the marina itself is imperiled. Just please keep in mind that coastal residents send at least $16 million a year in real estate taxes to Town Hall. And we've had some meetings recently with the Scituate Coastal Coalition, and a lot of our members feel that it's far more than that. I mean, if you consider not just the homes that are in a flood zone, but those that are close by, adjacent to it. We're basing all these numbers on 2,000 homes that are either in or very close by a flood zone, but there are many others that are not too far away from that. So if you use a figure of $16 million, that's a significant amount of money when you figure the total town budget's about $72 million. Coastal residents are more than very concerned. They can deal with coastal storms. They're accustomed to that. But what they cannot and won't deal with any longer is watching the foreshore protection of the town continue to crumble away. So that's our position. Unfortunately, I have to leave. What time is it, John?
It's 20 after 6.
Okay, I've got 10 minutes to get down there. Anybody that wants to see the program, the Blizzard 78, stop in there. Mike Wonkum is doing the meteorology of the storm, and I'm going to be showing some storm damage photos. So anyway, I've got to go.
Dave, can we ask you
yeah,
one quick?
Sure.
Just, how do you want to pay for it?
Well, last year, we had to do the motion by borrowing. I mean, we're open to however you guys make a suggestion. My guess is we're going to be told it has to be by borrowing. Hopefully, I'm wrong.
Where else would it come from?
Well, Bill is going to get into this, but one of the ways that we can see funding some of this would be to take some money from the meals tax, sell the minor fire station that we've talked about.
But this is, we've talked, I mean, this is, how many years in a row? This is third or fourth year,
Yep.
right?
This is the third year we've come to you
Right.
with a request.
So, right,
to
so,
do
and it's,
additional.
right, and you're going to come next year and the year after.
Well,
I mean, for 35 years, potentially.
I hope not. I hope that there's more state money that's, and state and federal money that's going to come down the pike.
Yeah.
If the feds come through with the way they keep promising, but never seem to, materialize, then maybe we'll be on track.
I guess my point is, by selling a piece of property isn't,
It's not gonna, no, it's not gonna solve the long term. It would help a little bit for funding this part of it.
Tony, one of the
Thank you,
biggest things we
Okay, I
got
gotta go.
out of our work for the last 3 years is to focus on the need for the seawalls, which it's always been in the background, but I don't know whether everybody has always picked up on it. And unless you walk the seawalls, you really don't see some of it. You don't see it from the land side. You need to go on the beach and look up. You need to have a little probe to probe into the cement to see that it's just crumbling, it's powder. And each one of these storms that comes in takes another little piece of it. I don't know if you've been down to the recent breach down on, by Doris's home, but just a large chunk came out of it. And you've gone down and spent a bunch of money to reinforce that with armor stone, and hopefully that's gonna help us until it can be repaired.
Right.
But what we need to do is focus on the funding, and through the money and the focus that we had last year, the town agreed to hire an engineer to come up with a proposal to go to the Cantwell Fund, and we were successful. The town was successful. Thank you very much for doing it. We were able to go forward, give the presentation, show the need, and we we were able to get an award. Part of that award was a grant, was a 50% grant, which is $2 million that doesn't have to be paid back. We would like to continue that effort to look for every fashion of funding, whether it be state, federal, county, emergency funding. We don't believe there's any funds coming from FEMA for it because they already determined that the walls are defective. They told us before that they wouldn't consider any of the damage to the walls because they already had a report that showed that they were in terrible shape. Jim O'Connell was involved in
I
that.
don't know about that, but
Okay, so we need to explore every fashion of funding that we can, and we'd like the money to go into some of it engineering, preparation. You've hired a coastal resource officer, which I think is a tremendous help to the town, and we need to continue that effort, but we need to do it now. And we need to do continual repair to the seawalls. It's just like any piece of equipment. It deteriorates over time. If you had an old vehicle that was deteriorating, you wouldn't think that tomorrow it's going to turn around and be good. You know that you have to put money into it or replace it.
Right.
And that's what we're asking you to do. There are many projects that can be done. I know we're talking on one on Oceanside now that we've been kind of hung up on some authorizations, but there are many other projects in town that can go forward at this point.
Bill, let me just interrupt you there, because
Yes.
I was going to let you finish, but, see, that's one of the predicaments I have. I think this board is acutely aware of the aging of the walls. I've been down to the walls. I've seen the boring, and the problem is the trying to ascertain what's exactly is in the center of the wall is hard to find out, because you won't know until you bore in and pull it out. Some wall that may look like an A wall, B wall, is actually a F wall. The walls have not been replaced over the course of the past, well, 78, some walls were replaced, some walls have been actually recovered. They were built in the 1910s or 20s. And so now we're faced with this colossal issue of replacing the walls, trying to figure it from a small-town perspective, how are we going to afford it? And the one way we're not going to be able to afford it is through our operating budget. We can't afford to say, well, we're going to take things away from services to fund walls. We can take a look at it through the capital, but even our capital plan that we have, that we're going to be talking about later on, can't fund, given this enormous size of $60 to $70 million to try to fund it. So the only other option is, as you say, it's either going to be some way of trying to approach it the way we've been attempting to, which is really a larger sums of money for what most people will hear in a minute, because I'm going to tell you. But in the big picture, it's really small pennies in a bucket to deal with $60 to $70 million to replace these aging and crumbling walls. Which means you got to go to the state, which we've been successful, thank heavens. But one of the biggest problems right now that we're facing with $4 million from the state is property owners who will not give those easements to be able to allow the town to go in to replace these walls. And we already have two issues that could jeopardize that $4 million. And that's a major issue that people have got to realize. You folks have been working really diligently in trying to, shall we say, convince people who live on the wall, the significance of allowing the town to be able to have an easement to go in to replace and repair the walls, and yet some of the people who are stating property rights, I'm not going to give an easement because I want to get compensated and I'm losing my property. But they're getting a huge benefit, which protects their house and their property from major damage. And that's an issue that's out there, and we've got to get that tackled, because if we lose $4 million, then people in this town are not going to go and say, let's increase our taxes in order to replace these walls, if they're not going to get a public benefit in the future out of it. The public benefit is the easement to replace and repair.
I agree with you, John. I think if the people won't or volunteer to go forward with that, I think the town needs to look into eminent domain.
I
and
agree.
take the property under the seawalls.
And
And I think if we were back in 1920 and looking at the situation, there probably were easements to those property owners that were never recorded properly.
I think you're probably right, because that's one of the things. The reason why I say that is this. Since 2010, since we've been on this board, with the exception of Maura, who's recent, this board has gone out. We spent $7,659,000. since 2010. That's what we've allocated.
Well, you've committed to it. It hasn't been spent at this point.
No, but that's what I'm saying, that we, as a town, have been challenged to try to go forward and address these issues. I think we're pushing to try to do it through your help, through this board's help, through the town's help. We've identified the significance of this issue, and we're trying to do that. I would love to think that if in the next 5 years, the town's able to commit another $8 million to this, that gets us $16 million. But what Dave said is, that's not going to get us, it's going to be piecemeal to do this. We definitely need federal and state funding somehow. And I think through our partnership to do it, I agree wholly with this. But I can't agree to say that we need to ask for this budget $2 million. I can't support that, because the question is, where's it going to come from?
Well-
It has to be another debt exclusion override or borrowing that people, taxpayers are going to have to realize your taxes are going to go up to pay for it. Otherwise, you got to take $2 million out of the budget, and that's a budget buster for services.
Well, we look at that, John, but on the other side, we look at it, we don't do something now, the real estate value in this town is going to continue to depreciate. We're the headlines of the news, the TV stations, every storm, the stations are down here, you know it, you're in the area, they stay overnight down here, and they just write about the destruction because our seawalls are breached. Once they breach, they can't evacuate. The drainage system is inadequate to get the water out of the basin once it comes in. We need to step forward and get something done. And I don't say that we're not, everybody is working towards it, but the town needs to step up and do it. If we dedicate a small portion of the budget, would be less than 3% of the budget towards the seawalls, the coastal property brings in almost 25% of the budget. We certainly need to give something back to the coastal areas to protect the value for the town. It's not just the homes, it's the livelihood of the town. It's the roads, it's the pumping stations, it's, you know the issues.
No, I do, but I think what you're asking is a bigger issue that needs to be vetted out so that everybody understands that, as opposed to saying we need an article at town meeting for $2 million. I mean, what you're suggesting, 2%, 3% of the budget, people in this town need to know if that's being advocated, not that that's happening, but if that's what you need to vet that out, because I would tell you, Bill, I don't think a lot of people would support that. People along the walls will, but I don't think a lot of people in town will, and say take 2% out of the budget, which means it's going to decrease other areas. I just see this as there's a major issue with the walls. We put on the ballot last year a non-binding question to find out, would you want, I think it was a betterment, and would you want some form of gradation? You know, the further you live away from the wall, would you agree to pay and contribute? And I think it wasn't a huge turnout from the ballot, but it was like 300 or 400 votes, I thought, that were applied to that.
All the questions were very arbitrary, John. They weren't worded so that people could actually understand where they were coming from. We had a lot of problem in the coalition about that, and we talked about it. It had already gone to press at the time.
But I would say then let's do it again.
We'll do it again.
Let's do it again. Let's put it out there. What do people want to do? You come ask the Coastal Coalition exactly what they want. I'll be happy to put it on the ballot. And let's see what people say. I'm just saying, that's fair. We attempted to do it. We weren't trying to obfuscate or mislead anybody or try to hide anything. We just thought we'd put it out there. I'd say, put something together. We'll put it out there and see what people say.
You know, part of what our association is trying to do is to make a plan to do a repair. Every other department has a 5-year plan as to what they're going to do in the future. There is no 5-year plan for seawalls. There's no, every time there is an incident, somehow we find a way of taking care of it. But we don't have a master plan that we're going to do this year and so much the next year so that we can plan and finance it. And I think we really need to work on that.
I think that's a very good point. We've attempted to try to address things. Originally, we were very reactionary, and now we've been trying to address things by looking at various sections. And I know Maura Curran has mentioned it, I know the other board members have, that, you know, that's something that we need to look long-term, because it looks as though that the people who are going to pay for fixing this long-term problem will be the residents of Scituate. it would be nice to get benefits from the state like we did last year, or from the federal government, but I think it's better for us to think about this, that it's going to be our fixed, and we're not going to be able to rely on any handouts from anybody other than us.
What you did, or the town did last year with the proposal to Cantwell.
Liz just gave me this to give to you.
Oh, okay.
That's Liz, Liz Charlton? Where's Liz? Why doesn't Liz come on and introduce her? You're with Jim Cantwell, though, Liz, right?
Asked me to deliver. I'm not part of the presentation. He asked me to deliver. He had to leave.
Okay. Oh, this is just a pie chart that Liz put together for us, and foreshore protection now is 1%. We think it needs to be increased for the benefit of the entire town.
But that's probably, if Liz, is that just based on our operating budget?
That was just based on the town meeting last year,
All right, so,
the pie chart that David asked me to enlarge.
but again, that's, it's dealing with, I'm not sure if it includes the enterprise fund or
Does.
not. It does. But I'm saying what you're dealing with a capital, major investment, like a public safety building, that we don't fund through our operating budget. We do it outside of the scope by saying you're going to increase your taxes to pay for this. And that's where I'm saying, I don't think you can, this is like comparing apples to oranges, because you'll never be able to fund replacing $70 million or $60 million or $50 million of seawalls through your operating budget. You just can't afford to do that.
But John, also, $500,000 a year is not going to do it either.
We can both agree on that, but the good news is, 6 years ago, you didn't even have that on an annual basis because the town didn't do it. Now we're at least trying to kick money as best we can towards that problem, so that if there is, money that we can bank away, we can at least address it without having to go and say, to the voters, now we need an override because you got to fix the wall. At least we've got something going. I'm not saying it's enough, but I just say that I think as a town, I think, I'll turn it over to the other board members because I'm monopolizing all the questions, but I just think that we're looking at the problem, we can attempt to try to think of a short-range, mid-term range, long-term range, try to repair it, and readjust it every 5 years. We've attempted to do that with the water, and I think the seawalls certainly apply there, the same situation. You got a $50 million fix, how are we going to fix it? Can't do it in 3 years, can't do it in 5. But let's take a look at from 5 to 10 to 15 years, readjust after 5 and see what we've done, what we've accomplished, do the same thing, so that maybe in 20, 25 years, we fixed the $50 million problem. That's my opinion on it, but anyway, I interrupted your presentation. I'm happy to turn out if you have more to address.
I mean, there are just many examples of where we need repairs. David highlighted some of them. Edward Foster Road,
Yep.
Turner Road and Oceanside. On the beaches, the entrances to the beaches, we need to do repairs. The stairs are inoperable. The openings are less than satisfactory. We have people who write into us and tell us that they won't come back to the beaches because the access is so terrible at North Scituate Beach. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do that may not cost a tremendous amount of money, which will make it more appealing for people to come and spend their money here in Scituate. And that's our focus.
Hold on 1 second only. Did you have a question more, or?
I just want to, can we get a copy of all those recommendations? Because I don't believe we have a copy of them.
Sure.
Whatever, at a later
Yep.
date. And then, Bill, I just want to say to you that I couldn't agree with you more, that we need a plan. And so I'm hesitant, obviously, I don't know where this $2 million would come from. And in my viewpoint, we need a strategic plan, and then we can assess where we're going to put the money. Because what we're doing today, if we were to approve your request, is, again, just putting $2 million more into a budget where, A, we don't know where it's going to come from, because we already have $1 million that we have to go into stabilization just to take care of this year's storm costs. So that's a huge impact for us. And B, we need to know, from a strategic aspect, where these fixes are going to happen. And it's more than just seawalls, as you said. It's about foreshore protection, not only along the seawalls, but also along Hummerock. It's a big issue. So I'm more of a proponent to putting together a strategic plan and forming a committee that not only involves the Coastal Coalition, but the DPW, our Coastal Resource Officer, and experts from the state and federal level, too, because this is far larger than just we in Scituate can take care of.
We agreed to that, but we need to start the funding now. When these projects finally get underway, it could be 2 or 3 years from now, and then the funding kicks in. We need to have some money in the kitty so that the engineering department can come up with the specs. DPW is extremely capable of doing this. They have in the past. The lighthouse project that they did, that was a tremendous project, and I think everybody would agree that it's worked out fantastic. It's protecting that area.
We were fortunate to use CPC funds for that,
We
correct?
used CPC, but we
Right.
also used seawall funds because it didn't cover the entire expense. But we need to have money in that account so that they can react to stuff. If we react to it, it will be less expensive in the long run.
Tony?
Yeah, I just, we had the same conversation, like we said a second ago, for the last 2 years. It's a problem that's much bigger than the town of Scituate can handle. Thank goodness for Jim Cantwell and some of the other people that are out there trying to get state and federal funding for us. As John mentioned very well, we need to be able to use that money, though. It'd be a shame if we lost that money because of not being able to get easements and stuff. The one thing I do want to say is, and again, repeating what John said, this board and people before it have made a huge step towards allocating funds to this, almost $7 million in the last 4 years. So that's, and that includes the $4 million that we're getting from the state. So it is very aware of it, where we are taking the initiative to do it. Sometimes there's only so much money you can spend in a year also on a project. So, we've got to weigh that in between things. And then, you brought up, like the entrance in Minot Beach. We've looked into that a number of times, and there's just not a safe solution to that yet. I think if that's the entrance you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, so.
There's 4 staircases, and you can't walk down any one of them.
So, I mean, these are all things that are being looked at and trying to figure out. The big problem is there's not a lot of money to pay for all these things, and there's unfortunately, this town is dealing with a half a dozen $50 million problems. OPEB, buildings, middle schools, public safety, there's a lot of things going on, and we've got to try and allocate it efficiently. But I just don't want you to get the impression that it's not known. Every time there's a storm, every one of us go and walk it and look at it, and we're aware of the condition. It's just a matter of getting the resources and getting them into that. And then there's the whole kind of roulette thing of fixing the right wall, right? Because any storm...
Yeah, any storm can
Any
change.
storm can break any
Depending on
wall.
what direction they come in.
Right. But it can break an A wall just as easily as it can break an F wall. So it's maybe not as easy, but...
Oh, because if you look at the cement in the walls...
I'm just saying, the storms can come in and they can
You can
destroy...
pulverize them with a screwdriver.
Right. Those are the bad ones, but any big storm could come and hurt a fair to good wall also. So it's a very difficult problem without a simple solution, unfortunately.
I really don't have anything to add, because everyone has said something that's touched on what I was going to say. Tony said it best, Mara and John, but it's a much bigger, the federal government installed these, in the 30s, like John said, and here we are asked to fix them or replace them. It's, like Tony just said, there are other places that need attention, being on the board as long as I have, I can recall the days we didn't do anything. You have to give,
That's the problem, Sean.
well, I'm just going back 20 years. You have to give this administration some credit, all right? And I would be the first to tell Dave that, we've come up to speed a
totally
lot.
agree.
Maybe not as fast as you and Dave and everyone else that lives along the shore. You'd like to see it faster, but everyone has their own, areas where they feel that that's the most important place to.
We're not directing a particular place. That's up to the DPW to do.
No,
that.
but I'm just saying, someone in the West End might
What we need to do is
have an
provide the
issue.
funds for them to do it with. And you've had 3 breaches in the last 3 years, so
And it's probably going to get worse at a quicker rate.
if you look at the walls, some of them are tipping towards the ocean, which is not a good sign.
Bill, do you think, again, funding sources, I think we've all pretty clear it can't come out of the operating budget, so the other options are capital budget or overrides, if the state and federal funds don't. So the $2 million is bigger than our whole capital budget every year. I mean, the capital budget's what, about $1.2 million a year?
It's 1.2, and it's 0 for FY16.
Right. So that'd be, the whole capital budget doubled. And then override would be the other option, and I think that's Sean was bringing up, and, I don't know how an override would pass in the town every year for that. So, so I don't think that there's just a bucket that we can just go say, okay, well, let's take it from here easily. And I think that's where the administration and the board is really trying to get whatever we possibly can and get it there and make commitments to, almost $500,000 a year at least towards the project. So, although it's not enough, just like OPEB, we're not putting enough in, and just like water, reclamation, we're not putting enough into that, but we're trying to, at least divvy it out and make good efforts in all areas. I wish I had a better answer for you.
All right.
John, can I just make a point of information? Because when people generate their own numbers, I like to tie them back to accuracy. The town budget's $62.6 million. It's not $72 million.
Right.
So when we run those numbers, it's important to really maybe touch base with accounting.
62
or something.
point-
It's 62.6.
6, thank you.
Questions from the audience? Otherwise, we got a long agenda. I think, anybody?
I just had one thing I wanted to add. Doris Crary of 8 Oceanside Drive, where currently the seawall went down 2 years ago, another chunk this year. And I have lived in my house 35 years. When I bought my house, I was told by the prior owner, because my deed is one of the deeds that reads to the low water line. I also abut the opening to town access. And I was informed that although my deed said that, that was not the case, that when the seawall was built, the beaches were grandfathered. And I have always understood that. It's always been public the entire 35 years I've been there. And I did sign the paperwork, although I felt it was, and I still have to be very honest about this, unfair for the town to, I certainly have no problem with you having access to do work on the wall, but to have to grant a permanent easement of 10 feet when you only have 50 feet from the edge of the wall to the street, that's 20% of your property that you were in control of. But I still signed it, and we went ahead with it because we believe the seawall is what really needs to be repaired, which not only affects our house, but houses all the way up the street and all the way down the other section there. And the important thing with this is that you really, and I know when we looked at numbers years ago, when we were, doing all of the work for the flood insurance program, the one thing that became very clear was the people along the water, many of them are seasonal homes, no children in school, and that in fact the properties along the ocean front were properties that basically helped to fund the entire town through its tax base. And I think that that's really important to remember, that part of putting in these seawalls and the foreshore protection is to really protecting the tax base of the town and the money that you need to run all of these things. So I feel real strong about that. The other thing that I would say is when we talk about the word here, we need to say maintenance. There has been zero maintenance. We would have been very happy if they had just come out and caulked where the cracks were in our wall with, it's like a black tarry substance, I don't know what it is, but that would hold for years in our walls. And it keeps the water that does the damage from getting inside that wall. So even though it's not out of the best cement, at least it holds it together. And so I think it's really important that we look at not only replacing walls, but truly maintaining them. And when we'd phone in, they used to come out and just fill the cracks. And that doesn't happen anymore. So I would like to see that happen. So that's what I wanted to add. And our section is ready to go, and maybe when we're identifying areas of the town, we shouldn't be quite so specific on the exact location, but put in a group of them that could be done, so the ones that come through where you're all set legally could then be the ones that get done first.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. So, I'm trying to think, do we need to vote on this?
Nope.
No,
It's your article, so it's going to be placed on, Bill.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming, and again, at least hopefully that we can respectfully disagree agree on a majority of what you're saying, but at least the funding portion, I think, is our major concern, is where it's going to come from at this point.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, so folks, I want to go back to the next agenda item we skipped down. That was the report of the town administrator.
Actually, I'd like to ask
to
you to
the-
defer one more so we can take care of the
Sure.
folks that are here for
Then
the
let's go to the
Council on
610
Aging.
recognition.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, for volunteers of the Council on Aging. And Ms. Hayes?
Yes, hi.
This is actually, not that everything that comes before this board is not a good thing, it's always a good thing, but this is what makes our town very special and unique. These are the circumstances, so I turn the floor over to you, Linda.
Yes, well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity that you had asked for me to be able to introduce and acknowledge the people that did help and support us and come to our aid and the aid
What did they do exactly?
Yes.
Just so that people understand, when you say helped you out.
helped us with snow removal we had a list of 80 when it was all complete.
80 homes?
80 homes. 80
residences?
Yep. Senior age residences all over town. And with the help of everyone else here, in fact, outreach staff for the Council on Aging, SANS, which I think, and Kim will attest, that initiated through a conference call with a group of nonprofits for which they qualified to be on. And through them, we found, or they found us, these wonderful guys from Nahama, which is a nonprofit organization, Jewish Response to Disaster. And, showed up at our door, and from there proceeded to very systematically and methodically assess all of these homes and a number of homes that they could get to on a day-to-day basis. Through their own networks, they were able to make other volunteer connections within Scituate, within their own networks, so also named on the agenda, the Appalachian Service Project, their own network of high school associates through BC High, All Hands, another nonprofit, and Team Rubicon. So all contributed to some way, shape, or form to the 80 homes that were at least contacted. 50 were actually taken care of through these guys and with the help that they were able to amass, but 30 others were contacted and maybe assessed, maybe they couldn't help, maybe the work was already at that point done, but this has been for 2 weeks.
And that's almost like
So-
4 feet of snow that was
They
shoveled.
can tell you better than that, 4 feet on the
sure.
ground, but, and a lot more probably on the roofs that they
Who are
did take
some of
care
these
of.
people out here? Yeah.
Stand up.
Can we have them stand up?
Absolutely. Do you
So,
mind?
Let me introduce Bill Driscoll and Mark McGilvery from Nahama. They felt when they heard about the problems here, and they were from the area originally, from the South Shore, that this is where they wanted to be for our own form of disaster recovery.
I just can't say enough, thank you. I mean, hearing about this, and we heard a lot about a lot of stuff during these snowstorms, but the fact of volunteering to help out to do it is just phenomenal, to activate and energize not just your own organization, but other organizations that are open and available to do it, want to help out, but just don't know about it. This is just a huge benefit to our town, and as I say, this is what makes Scituate special, to be able to have people such as yourselves who care. Having grown up here, having visited here, just having the ability of recognizing people need help. That's a great trait. It's a great character that a lot of people, I wish more people would have. And I think that's what makes you literally heroes to these people, and certainly a huge benefit for this town. And personally, I can't thank you enough for all of you for getting involved in doing it. And SANS, too. I mean, people don't realize this organization's out there to help people during disaster and relief, and, we're very blessed and thankful to have you folks.
I just got to say something, John. Thank you from me as well. Everyone is just so busy that you guys, I'm sure, are no different than anyone else, and you women, that you found the time to do that. Took the time out. You probably could have been doing some things around your own home, your own driveways and all that, but you didn't. And that means a lot to me. Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
If I could just say
Please.
one thing, I think, so Mark and I work for the Jewish Response to Disaster, as was mentioned. we're based in Minnesota. We work all over the country after natural disaster events, so floods, tornadoes, hurricanes. And everyone keeps asking us how we ended up in Scituate, versus anywhere else that was in need. And ultimately it comes down to things work the way they're supposed to work within the nonprofit world and the disaster response world. And that's, through Massachusetts Volunteer Organizations Act in Disaster Coalition, we were engaged at the state level, phone calls about where the needs are. And everyone's kind of saying, yeah, we think we need some help, we have some people that may need it, we don't really know where they are. And so the short answer is that Scituate was organized. Because for us to come into an area, we need to know who needs the help, because we have the tools and the expertise to actually do the work. But we'd rather not spin our wheels and try and find the clients to do the work with. So through SANS, stepping up on a mass VOED call, connecting us in with Council on Aging, the Senior Center, and basically social services in Scituate, the short answer is you guys are organized. And so 9 times out of 10, groups like ours are going to show up where we know we can do good work and do it efficiently, and that's really what it came down to. So it's a tremendous partnership with the social service apparatus in town, and then being able to reach out locally to Appalachian Service Project and some of the churches and others, Jeff and others, was tremendous, because no one wants to work in the cold. It's not as sexy as tornado response in the middle of the summer. And so we really relied upon local volunteers to do this one. And so that was really great to see that some local networks kind of mobilized to support their neighbors. So can't say enough about working in Scituate, and we're both from Milton, so we know the area a little bit, have family and friends down here, so it was interesting to be responding in our own backyard, so to speak.
Well, I hope the next time you come to Scituate, it's going to be nice and hot and sunny. You can enjoy the beach weather as opposed to our winter weather and storm weather.
Yeah, I've made it clear. My next visit's going to be with a surfboard until. Yeah, just to reiterate a little bit of what Bill said, we go to all sorts of places to respond to all sorts of things, and what you had here locally, if we could replicate that all over the country, it'd be a good thing. So it's just an example to all, and certainly an example to us, the work that you guys are doing here locally. Linda, Mara, and Jenny, and Kim, they made some really special stuff happen for you guys, and otherwise we really wouldn't have been here to do our side of things. So
Good.
a lot of credit goes to them as well.
Very nice.
John, can I just say one thing?
Please.
I thank you for pointing that out, because I think we have a great team in place, and I think it's worth saying Kathleen McCarthy, Kim Stewart from SANS, in addition to Laura Minier and Jennifer Keefe, and under Linda Hayes as well, did a terrific effort in coordinating with you all. So I think the best way that our community, what we can do to say thank you is to donate to your organization, donate to ASP, donate to All Hands or Team Rubicon where we can. I know I've already supported ASP because those kids came out and helped you as well. So if the general public out there can help and support your organization and continue your good work, I hope our Scituate residents will do that. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, folks, again. All right, so now we're going to go back again. Go back to the report of the town administrator. Tricia.
Thank you. Just a few quick items, because I know you do have a long agenda. I do want to update the board and for folks watching where we are relative to storm cleanup. And we're going to get into the weeds a little more under the special town meeting warrant articles, because the list that we went over a few weeks ago is obviously had a bunch of stuff added to it. So we expect some snow this evening and more Thursday night. So essentially, for the past 2 days and for the next 2 days, Nancy and I have really almost had to blow up the entire FY16 capital plan and this budget in terms of what we have to get us through June 30th. And so there'll be a number of changes that we have to communicate to you next week in the recommended FY16 budget, and that we'll also present to Capital tomorrow night. Right now, we have a $103,000 deficit in the snow removal budget. We expect that that could be as much as $400,000 by June 30th, because with all the different storms and invoicing from all the contractors that we use. You know, we know what we have for open POs, but we still have a lot to process. That is just for snow removal. So that means we've already exhausted our $485,000 budget and have another $400,000 on top of that potentially. Unlike many of the communities around us, we fund our snow removal budget annually within a good amount to cover what our actual expenses are. I think that a number of communities are going to have a challenge because their snow budget probably doesn't really reflect actual expenses because you can deficit spend and even raise it on the recap at the end of the year. So I think, you know, it's prudent that it's been budgeted as to what we really have used traditionally. The board's approved $1.15 million in emergency costs, two separate authorizations, one for $700,000 and one for $450,000.
That's both for snow and
It's for
1.5?
debris removal,
Debris.
overwash along the coast, overtime, private contractors, cleanup in Hummerock.
Storm removal excluding the snow.
That's
I gotcha.
correct. So, and we have to pay for that. So the budget is really going to be somewhat under stress for the rest of this year after town meeting. If all the articles we're recommending for the special town meeting are approved, we'll have just $192,000 left to get us through June 30th. And we will be taking upwards now of possibly $1.8 million out of the stabilization fund to fund all that, which will put that, A, it's good that we have it, but B, a much less amount that we need to replenish. As you know, the FY16 capital plan does not recommend any borrowing whatsoever, and that was intentional because we have just asked voters to approve over $90 million in tax increases, so we want to live within our budget and be able to manage what we have. These storms and the frequency of them deal a terrible blow to us in terms of financial stability, in terms of our 5-year planning. We do have planning for all our capital infrastructure, including foreshore protection. We have 2 town engineers in the town. They could design 40 hours a week with funds that we already have appropriated over the last 5 years. But these kinds of events take us away from the day-to-day management of the town. So it's a constant challenge. So again, we just recognized the great work that all those volunteers did through SANS to come help our community. I expect sometime to have the entire DPW in here and Mike Breen, along with Kevin and Sean, to thank them for the work that they continue to do. We ask a tremendous amount of our municipal employees during these storms. We're impacted much more severely than most other communities, and our schools are open, our roads are passable, and the next challenge is going to be when that snow melts, what we find under it, because we simply cannot see it. And right now, we're working to put together a program for pothole maintenance and filling. Just a little preamble to that. Hot asphalt plants do not open till April 15th, and that is weather dependent. So all we can really do between now and when they open and do a hot patch is stabilize a pothole, and that means the pothole has to be a fairly large size before we can put any material in to compact it. So we're working on a program really to help residents help us identify potholes, which seems counterintuitive to not knowing about them, because if you don't know about them, you're not responsible. But it's very clear that we have several roads that have been impacted by potholes and sidewalks and things like that. So we want to get out ahead of it as soon as possible, but we can't respond to them until, again, we get some hot asphalt. So there might be lots of orange cones in places.
Ruth,
But-
can you make sure you put that in the paper, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to be complaining, and the reality is, you can't fill a pothole until you get the asphalt. The asphalt's not going to be ready until April 15th.
And the second thing I wanted to mention is I'm sure many of you saw the article in the Mariner 2 weeks ago that town of Scituate is the second hottest growing town in Massachusetts. That means people are moving here, people want to live here for the quality of life and the amenities that we provide, and we had the 2 highest home sales in this community last year. So the people definitely want to come here, and our property values are certainly holding strong if we've had the 2 highest property sales that we've ever had. And that's all I have, other than the third item, which is I had the board vote to do a not-to-exceed contract amount for Doran Whittier 2 weeks ago. This is the architectural and design services for the public safety building. My apologies when I originally added the math from the memo that I gave you, because I added it wrong. So I was only off by $115,000. You have an executive action, I think, from Lorraine to change that to, the handout, sorry, to change the not to exceed from 1.2 to 1.315. And that is for Doran Whittier to do full architectural design for the public safety building, in addition to site surveying, geotechnical analysis, septic soils analysis, and we are not going to be a LEED certified building, but we are going to be a LEED eligible building, which means we save some money, but if we want to move forward at some point in the future, the building won't be constructed such that it prevents us from pursuing that at some point in the future. We did that with the library project. We're the leading green community in the Commonwealth, so obviously we want to, keep in with our goal of clean energy, especially when we're building our own buildings, but being cognizant of the added cost for those, it's another $80,000 to $100,000. We're just going to meet the requirements for LEED certification, but not actually add the money to the budget to actually do it. So that's what makes up the 1.315 in the amended contract.
Questions?
Just one quick, when we hear if we get any state funding for the storms?
The governor's budget comes out tomorrow, and there is some recommendation for reimbursing for municipalities, but we probably won't see it. Well, Nancy, you said sometimes they turn around quicker.
Yeah, we still don't have a presidential declaration of a federal disaster area. That has been extended till the end of March. So we're in the process right now of working with MEMA, because MEMA is now collating all of the snow removal for all of the storms in January. Because if we think about it, we had 100 inches in 30 days, which is ridiculous, and we broke all kinds of records. So they're trying to package it all, so perhaps more would be eligible.
Right.
So until we become declared as a presidential federal disaster, that's when the coffers open for FEMA. Until that happens, we have no access to FEMA funds, and they won't even talk to us.
But if it extends, then those guidelines are more likely to hit.
The snow removal should be easier as a reimbursement because it's a finite cost, whereas damage has to be inspected and assessed. Snow removal is, here's my bill, this is what they did, there you go. So those, we would expect to come in faster than damage requests for rebuilding roads or...
We'll probably hear? So of that 1.8 million that may have to come out of stabilization initially, some of it may be reimbursed.
I would say we would hope to recoup some of the probably close to $800,000 we're going to spend on snow removal this year.
But it depends. I mean, the legislature would have to borrow it, and they're already closing a deficit, so we don't know. But typically what we do with the storms in the past is we spend it out of stabilization, our free cash is certified in June, and we replenish it to stabilization at the fall town meeting. And that's good practice, because that is what the stabilization fund is for, a catastrophic event for which the town needs to have reserves. Our free cash is not going to be probably as substantive as it has been, because the budgets are a lot tighter now. So we're going to be facing some challenges in FY16, and that coupled with, making sure we appropriately plan for these new buildings coming on, for their operation and maintenance. We have to sharpen our pencils going forward.
Sean?
No, I was just going to ask if that's going to happen, or is that what you said? You're not sure? If
for the FEMA reimbursement, the state may still give us some reimbursement, some assistance for snow and ice, and last year they gave us assistance for potholes. So it's there's a good chance that we might see some assistance this year. But keep in mind, the problems that we have, they also have the same problems on the state level. They've expended all of their funds for snow and ice, so they're going to want to address their issues. This particular administration has been very forthcoming that it is very pro-municipality, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do along those lines, if they provide snow relief and as well as pothole relief within the fiscal year.
I just remember when the governor was here, didn't he ask that you have two different sets of numbers for snow removal as well as damage, personal property damage and roads and things like that?
Right, we keep separate ones, but we all know the FEMA story is even if we're eligible, and we had the preliminary meeting 2 weeks ago, they were here for a preliminary damage report for Juneau. We're still waiting on $8 million from Sandy. And, each time we get FEMA assistance, that's great, but when we actually see that money, and that requires a 25% cash match, and most of that $8 million is for foreshore protection. So when that comes, we'll need to do the 25% cash match.
And FEMA is part of the Department of Homeland Security, which is only on a 7-day operating budget currently. Did it get passed?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So.
Good to know FEMA's back in business.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on.
I need the motion and the approval for the Door and Whittier, John.
Move that the Board of, okay?
Yep, go right
Move the
ahead.
Board of Selectmen approve the Public Safety Building Design Services contract for Door and Whittier by amending their contract amount from not to exceed $1.2 million to not to exceed $1.315 million.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Curran. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 4-0. Anything else?
Nope, that's enough, I think.
Tricia, thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to go back to the scheduled items. 6:30 discussion, special town meeting and annual town meeting, non-monetary articles. We've already done number 1, now 1A, that is. Now we're going to go to 1B, which is a petition for zoning amendments to Section 490, Plan Development District. Attorney Frank Colpoys, good evening. He's here on behalf of the applicant, and Paul Mirabito, engineer. Paul's still here?
Yes, he is.
Gonna sit in the back? Paul, you're going to come up to the table. This gentleman is?
My name's Dick Bohanec. I'm on the board for the association.
Good evening, and welcome.
Nice meeting.
So, if it pleases the board, I'll give a brief introduction. I know you got a busy agenda tonight, and this is pretty straightforward, but I'll kind of give you a little bit of background here. I do represent the Scituate, the Association of the Condominiums at the Scituate Country Club. I think you folks know where that is, I assume, across from the golf club. It's the condominium complex there. And we're here today looking for the support of this board with respect to a zoning amendment, a petition article to amend Section 490.3, paragraph B. Basically, by way of brief background, these condominiums were built in the late 1980s. It's been, I think, a pretty successful condominium complex in the town. They serve a great purpose in terms of a lot of people who want to stay in town and kind of downsize a bit, and I think it's been a successful complex. When it was built, there was, and still currently, there's a restriction in the zoning bylaws that only 40 units can be built in this sub-district. And this change that we're recommending is just for the sub-district. It's just in the immediate area around this condominium complex. And that was the restriction in there, and there was some other formula, but basically it was 40 units that can be built. 36 were built at this condominium complex across from the golf course, and 4 were built a little bit further down, straddling Kent Street and the Driftway. And so the 40 is maxed out at this point in time. The association is bringing forth this article to expand the number of condominium units that can be built there, to expand it to 48. They want to build an additional 8 units up in this complex to bring a total of 44 in this area. 4 are still in the other area. The reason they're doing this, and it almost goes to a mini government thing like you folks have been talking about this evening, is rather than hit all the owners with a large assessment, because this complex needs some maintenance that's happened for something that was built in the late 1980s,
roadways need some work, sidewalks, lighting, shingling of the buildings. There's some significant stuff that needs to be done there to terms to improve them. And rather than hit the owners with a really large assessment, this is a way to partner with someone to construct it, to raise funds that will be used to help the whole complex. That's the purpose of this. And the room exists for this. Dick, why don't you take over for a second, and you can show the board where we're talking about.
If I stay back there. Okay. So this is our current complex. It comes down to Driftway. This is the country club. These are the 5 units that are there now. We have enough property to be able to build another building. So Paul Marabito laid out the system before, did the civil engineering on it. We approached him and said, how would we fit these buildings in? Would we, have enough room and fall back from the property lines? And that all seems to be in line. So the good news is if we can add 8 more units, that helps us, the condo association. And I'll be the first one here tonight that's not going to ask for money. We're going to say we're going to maybe contribute another $50,000 to $60,000 in tax money for it. And so that's where it is, and what we're asking for is your support and approval to move this forward to the town meeting for a vote.
And if you look at it there, you can almost see like it was a phase that's almost intended to go in there.
Can we just pass that around so we can take a look at it? Thanks.
But there was a limitation, you could only put 40 units in the district. So there was no room to do any expansion, even though if you look at it there, it looks like it's an area that was almost reserved for further expansion. It's right set back. In fact, the setbacks are further away than the other buildings are from abutters.
Frank, when was the you said the 80s, that's when the overlay, I assume, was that when it was
Correct.
put in?
Yeah.
And the zone itself is it site-specific, or is it also slightly beyond that?
No, it's beyond that, well, it's the site of this condominium association, but it does extend down a little bit to include that area where they built the other 4 units. But that's it, it's that area of town, it does not extend to anywhere else.
Where's the?
So these buildings, those buildings are up now?
Down there.
They're all existing.
What about that one? That
Yep.
doesn't, oh, it's.
No, it does.
all right,
So where are
there's
the other
5.
4? Just trying to
There's
keep-
5. 1,
No,
2,
no.
3, 4.
No, down by your thumb, down
Down
there.
here somewhere. Kent Street and
Yeah.
Driftway, you said.
Paul can explain a lot of this too. Paul was actually on the planning board at the time that these
Have
were
a
built,
picture there?
and
I think the 4 ended up being down here.
They're down here
By
somewhere.
the bean field?
Yeah.
Down there.
There's actually houses on it right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Those addresses are Kent Street, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what they're
yeah, I
saying.
believe they are.
Right.
There's a couple of them that are on,
Maybe it's Kent
I
Street?
think it's Driftway there, and it's actually Kent Street behind it. It's Old
So
Kent
are they
Street.
by the tee box of the?
Yeah, the par 3 there on the road, kind of across the street from that.
So why do you think they put the 40 restriction on that?
I don't know what exactly, maybe Paul can speak to this, because he was on the planning board at the time.
This sub-district B was a part of a planned unit development, which included a Widow's Walk, and around the rim of the upper rim of the golf course, there was 250 units of townhouses planned, which never got built. But in addition to that, there were 40 units that were planned to go near the Scituate Country Club, because there was a planned tunnel underneath the Driftway that would allow people to play a Widow's Walk, then go over to Scituate Country Club and vice versa. So where the Widow's Walk had a large component of housing, the planning board thought it was in the best interest of the town to have additional housing on the golf course property, and that's how we created Sub-District B. And there was a total of 40 units, and it was based upon how much land you had in the sub-district. And where the Scituate Country Club had the majority of the land in that sub-district, by formula, they ended up with 36 units, and there were 4 units planned across the street on the vacant land at the time.
And I'm sorry, Tom.
Go ahead.
I think it's important that this board understand that by having this zoning change, this doesn't mean it's going to happen. All it means is that by special permit, we're going to have to go in front of the planning board and get approval for these additional 8 units, and go through all the other permitting process of the town. So it's not as a matter of right if this happens, it just gives the opportunity for the association to expand to these additional 8 units. And as Dick pointed out, this place is self-sufficient. They do their own roads, they do their own trash removal, they do all of that. There's less than 5 usually in the school system. I think there's only 3 right now out of all of these units. It's typically not that type of development. So this place is really a positive, I think, from the town, a very cash positive one, a good asset for the town. And it helps out the association to be able to build these 8 units, and I think it helps the town from a cash standpoint and gives a housing alternative that's kind of a nice fit for a lot of people who'd like to go there.
John?
I agree, Frank. It's a very nice development. What do the neighbors think? Is this the first board you've been to? Bill Limbach is back there, and, have you?
No. We've been in front of the planning board, and we got their unanimous support of it. We've been before the advisory committee. They haven't taken their final vote yet, but I can represent to this board based on their comments and their questions that they were in favor of it. We'll find out when they do their final vote. We're reaching out to the abutters. There's a meeting on the 12th of March just to talk to the abutters. The abutters will have ample opportunity, even if this goes through, to deal with the whole special permit processing and permitting hearing situation that's going to come down the road. So we want to work with them. This area is further away from where there's current buildings from abutters. I'm not going to represent that there wouldn't be an abutter, which is I don't want it there, but its impact appears to be less than is currently constructed right there. And we are reaching out to the abutters.
That's huge to me.
Yep. March
Sent
12th.
out, a registered letter to them, letting them know Monday.
Even informally, if you had a neighborhood meeting or something.
Well, that's what they're doing at the country club.
Yep,
Yep, they're going to meet there and talk to them and get their feedback and do things like that. So absolutely, we're reaching out to try to do this the right way.
Other questions?
Just
who
what number
owns
of
the property?
bedrooms are they?
The association
So the
owns it, and there's a-
association, they're not related to the country club?
No.
Okay.
Separate
And they're
and distinct.
building it themselves, or they're contracting it out to be built?
Yeah, working on an arrangement with contractors to work it out.
Maura?
I just had one, the size of the units, are they 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
Well, the way we're laying out the plan right now, the big thing is there will be a master bedroom on the first floor in all the units, and then another bedroom on the second floor, and possibly like a study or a small office area on the third floor.
They're comparable to what's there now.
Okay.
In size.
Yeah, and, and the condo rules say that any building that's put on has to look exactly like the ones that are there. So everything we're looking forward to on the outside will be exactly the same. On the inside, naturally, there'll be some improvements because of the new rules and regulations, like you need a sprinkler system and different items that have to be added that weren't there in 1988. So that'll be all upgraded and improved. And so it looks like it's moving along well.
Sean?
My only other question would be sewer?
Yeah, it would be. There's sewer there now.
Right.
And these 8 units would be connected to the town sewage system, and the appropriate connection fees and betterment fees or what have you paid. So the answer is yes, 8 units.
What do we tell people that have been waiting for sewer? That, now these units, and I think they'll be very tastefully done. It's a great project, and it'll be an extension of a great project. But what do we tell the next neighborhood that might not be able to get tied in because of these that are tied in? Or, these people are gonna go, get tied in immediately, and someone else is gonna have to wait a little longer. That's what, that's what we hear from,
Right. I guess it's no different decision than you people, unfortunately, who I get paid the big bucks all the time, have to make these decisions.
That's the only
And this is-
downside,
I understand, and I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to those folks. I think if you look at, for the town as a whole, it's going to be a positive, and it's going to be a financially positive
Right,
thing.
revenue.
That doesn't alleviate those people who are waiting, but I guess decisions have to be made and weighed. And, there's already 36 paying folks up here. It is another 8, just 8 though.
Tony? You got a question?
No, I was wondering, is this the only, what did you say, it was B? Is that, it's Zone B?
Sub-district. B. as part of
Okay,
the
so
plan
how many
unit
could you
development.
put on a piece of property like this now? You know, because had that restriction back in the 80s. Somebody put that on that property. What would the restraints be on that, on a piece of property like that now somewhere else in town? Or is that the only B?
It's the only, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
So that
Tony,
is.
it's the only area,
So this is
it's right
just
now.
a little satellite thing that they carved out back
Yeah,
in that area?
that's it.
It's
This
just
is
that
the only
parcel,
land in town zone for this.
Yeah.
it's this parcel plus the other 4 homes or whatever,
Right.
that's it. It doesn't
Right.
include anything,
Right.
doesn't include like the golf course or anything else?
No.
Okay.
And they're really not big homes. I mean, they're condos, 2-bedroom
You're right.
Right.
condos, so usage for sewer would be probably a little less than.
Oh, and, yeah, new construction, everything, low-flow toilets, all that, very low.
Questions from the audience? Yes.
Tim Fitzgerald, Booth Hill Road. Hate to be the fly in the ointment, but this smacks of spot zoning. How is this going to benefit my neighbors on Booth Hill Road by giving this development, which was limited in good discussion many years ago, an extra 8 units? I mean, I'd like a couple of 8 units on my property too. And I won't have to hit the town for taxes. I'm just wondering, how is this going to benefit me? I heard the phrase, this is good for the town. Well, how is it good for Booth Hill Road people, just as an example of a road?
You know, I don't think it's spot zoning. I think this is zoned already for this. It's just an expansion of the current requirements in there in terms of the formula and the unit numbers. You know, I mean, everyone, I suppose, has an argument they'd like to build in certain areas of town or whatever, but I think when I talk about the positive, I'm talking about, you know, 50 to 60,000 in taxes we were estimating with kind of limited town public safety and other, you know, problems or you know, utilization. So that's all I can tell you is I don't think it's a spot zoning situation, and I do think it's a positive thing for the town financially.
Any other questions?
That's all I had.
All right, well, again,
It's a petitioner, right?
it's petition, your article, you'll be on the floor. I assume you'll be presenting it. And there's no need for us to vote it. It's not.
We're not voting
We're not
tonight
voting it,
anyways, right?
But, any other questions? If not,
I guess I look at it, I have one question. Does the board support this movement or this building?
Want me to go first?
Sure.
I'd like to just, right tonight, I would support it. I'd like to see what the neighbors had in case there's some information that for example, if it might create a flooding issue at someone at the end of Cobb Lane or something like that, or, you know, if it didn't have any impact on those abutters, then you'd have my support.
And Sean, that's why I point out that this isn't as a matter of right. I mean, all of those issues are going to be vetted by the fine boards we have in this town, starting with planning, you know, conservation, everything else with respect to this. So those are, all we're asking, I guess, is for the opportunity to have that, to go before those boards. All good issues, all things that are going to have to be met, or it shouldn't be a approved project.
Built, right.
Tim, you got a great question, because I have to say, I've been thinking about it since you raised it, the issue of spot zoning. I think maybe the way that, because that's why I asked the question about the actual, how large is the zone? It's encompassing of the zone. It appears to be that, frankly, the condominium covers all of it with the exception of the other 4 property owners or homes. I think if it was a larger area, if it encompassed Scituate Country Club, I'd probably be more agreeable saying I think there is more spot zoning unless they're changing the whole entire zone by increasing the numbers, which I think, as opposed to specifically saying we got a residential district, we're just going to change this one property for the purposes of, it happens to be almost the entire zone. But I think maybe that's one way of rationalizing it. I guess you could perceive it as being spot zoning. I think increasing it, it does seem like it fits in looking at it. We'll see what the town says.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably spot zoning back in the 80s, right?
It seems like.
I mean, initially, it was, we picked a spot and.
We said this is what it's going to be.
This is what we're going to make these.
But I would say that, you know, hold on, Mr. Rubio, I would say, I think it's a good thing. You know, and I think the town might want to get behind it because I think clearly the association, the condos, they're well done, they're maintained. Granted, you've got some issues you got to deal with, making sure the association kicks into the common fees going forward, but I think it's a good thing overall. Sorry, I
I
interrupted.
just want to point out, the zoning bylaw that this was created, that this site was developed under was what they call a planned unit development. There were, I believe, 4 different sub-districts, A, B, C, and D. Those sub-districts included the land that's the Widows Walk Golf Course, the Conservation Park, the landing across the street, the entire Scituate Country Club property, and the land across the street between Kent Street and the new Driftway. This was only one component of that zoning district, which was probably hundreds of acres of land. And sub-district B was for the housing adjacent to the Scituate Country Club and across the street as well.
But it is creating the kind of housing that the town is demanding right now. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
people that are trying to downsize their houses and looking for these, more affordable housing opportunities. It seems like these are.
I mean, that was the big thing we did. We went through a couple real estate agencies that, in town, that are very reputable and know the market very well. And they said there's just not enough of first-floor bedroom condos around anymore, and people are looking for it as they downsize and become empty nesters.
All right, seeing that it's almost 7:30, I appreciate presentation. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. Good luck.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep, thank you again. We're going to move on to the next special annual town meeting, non-monetary article, which is number 2, Clap Road Land Swap. Attorney Adam Brodsky's here. I see you, Adam. And I believe you're probably with your clients, right?
I am. You may remember Jack Livingston from the Livingston Companies and Steve Callahan from Global Development. And we were asked to come in to update you on our efforts to present the conceptual plan to the community. So what we've done, and since we were in front of you in the fall, is we've been in front of the Conservation Commission, we've been in front of the Planning Board, and we held a public informational session a few weeks ago to present the conceptual plan for this comprehensive permit project. The selectmen were concerned and that the community did not understand the nature of the project, which forms the basis for the land swap. So we've completed that process. We were invited to come back in front of you to provide you with that update. I'm certainly prepared this evening to present that conceptual plan to you if you wish. Most of you have likely seen the plan and seen the presentation in some form, but we're more than happy to do that. With respect to the land swap itself, we've revised the proposed article. I've been in communication with town council. He solicited some comments. I do have a red line version of the article which I can present to you. This has not been approved yet by Mr. Toomey, but it's in generally an acceptable form, I think, for him. And what we did is actually, as part of the article, Jim suggested that we provide a sketch plan that explained more clearly what portion of that Ellis property is proposed to be conveyed. That's the 1.8 acre parcel of town-owned land that we're proposing be swapped in return for the 16-acre parcel of land with access on Clap Road, as well as the additional 11 acres of land owned by Whitcomb Pines LLC that's subject to conservation restriction that would also be conveyed to the town. So I do have copies of those if you're at all interested. We had prepared for the public informational session a handout. I think Lorraine has sent it to you. It's a fact sheet which describes the proposed project as well as the proposed land swap, and on the back side has, again, a copy of a plan that shows those parcels. I do have copies of those here if you want to see that. These are available for the public if any members of the audience want them, and I can certainly hand them out to you. So we're here to answer any questions. I'm happy to share with you the draft article that Jim's reviewing, and I'll be guided by you.
Do you have drawings of what it would look like with the 252 units on it?
Yes. Be helpful to set it up over there?
Probably over here, yeah,
Sorry.
if you could, Adam. Sorry, almost in front of Lorraine there.
That's okay.
TV can get it.
See if I can get the angle correct.
Do you get it? Thanks.
Mr. Bigman, would it help if I gave you the, literally the 2-minute primer?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is the 24-acre parcel of land that's owned by Realty Trust, essentially owned by Mr. Livingston. Chief Justice Cushing Highway Route 3A is here. Here's Booth Hill Road. And so the intersection of Booth Hill Road and Chief Justice Cushing Highway would be here. Here's the Merritt Woods condominium development. The proposed access would be from Booth Hill Road. We're proposing, it's actually a double-barreled driveway for emergency access. There'll be, I think, 4 16-foot travel lanes with a 4-foot median. It's approximately 900 feet long, leading to this central roadway system. In order to build this entranceway to Booth Hill Road, we'd have 2 wetland crossings. There'd be a small portion of wetlands that would be filled in this area, and a small portion of wetlands that'd be filled with a crossing, a small bridge here. The project is designed to avoid wetland impacts. There's a small wetland system here, there's a small wetland system here. This would be the only impacts to wetland associated if indeed we have to access the project from Booth Hill Road. It's less than 5,000 square feet of wetlands alteration permitted under the Wetlands Protection Act. We provide a one-to-one replication on the property consistent with the Wetlands Protection Act. We're proposing 8 buildings. They're 3-story buildings, and they're 3-story buildings on purpose. We're going to maintain an extensive amount of vegetation. This is a heavily wooded area, as you well know, and we're going to maintain that vegetative buffer. With 3-story buildings, we do not believe that you would actually see this project from any of the neighboring areas, including 3A. So there are 8 3-story buildings. There'll be 24 to 36 units per building, and you see them located here. Surface parking and 15 essentially small garages so that we'd have some covered parking for the units. A clubhouse and pool amenity for the residents of this project. And again, this is a rental project. This is not a to-be-owned project. Stormwater will be managed on site. There is going to be an on-site wastewater treatment system. So we're not talking about a sewer connection with this. That will be treated. In fact, the total number of units, it's proposed as 252 units. The total number of units will really be determined by the size of the wastewater treatment. That's really the maximum. We've done a number of studies out there. We need to go and do additional work to really define that number. So that number may come down a little bit depending upon the sizing of the wastewater treatment system. Because we're close to the town forest, which is excuse me, let me make sure which is right here. We're proposing as public amenities a series of hiking trails. So that in a very quick nutshell, is the project. The proposed land swap, which we've discussed in the past, and again, this is reflected on the hand. And this gives you a better understanding as to where the project's located. So again, Chief Justice Cushing Highway, this is the proposed public safety building. No longer proposed, will be built by the town. Here's Booth Hill Road, and that's the proposed access from Booth Hill Road. Merritt Woods here. This is essentially a portion of the Ellis property that was acquired by the town. The date escapes me, I think it was late 60s, early 70s. And so a portion of the Ellis property is on the eastern side of Chief Justice Cushing Highway, and there's also a portion on the western side. And this shouldn't be confused with the town forest, which is actually behind this wooded area that fronts on Chief Justice Cushing Highway. This project is going to have nothing whatsoever to do with the town forest. We're not proposing any land swap with respect to town forest. But this is a piece of town-owned land that was acquired from the town for a bunch of different potential uses, including potentially building schools. And so the concept, obviously, is to acquire approximately 1 acre portion of the Ellis property, not the town forest, in order to relocate our access away from Booth Hill Road. So we're going to eliminate that access and access the project from Route 3A. I mean, in return for this, and you may recall, I mean, you made it crystal clear that the only way that you would support a land swap is that if we provided a significant benefit to the town. And in fact, several proposals were made to the selectmen, which were rejected because it was not a large enough benefit to the town. And ultimately, what we proposed is to deed to the town, essentially, the second project for this parcel. So behind this 24-acre parcel of land is a 16-acre parcel of land with frontage and access on Clap Road, significant uplands on this property. This property could, in the future, be developed for another 40B project. And what my clients are proposing in return for the 1.8 acre parcel of land, so we get access to Chief Justice Cushing Highway and not bother the Booth Hill Road neighborhood, propose to convey this 16-acre parcel of land to the town to be used as the town sees fit. In addition, you may remember Jack and Steve are almost completing, or actually very soon will have completed the Whitcomb Pines project. The last phase is substantially completed. But as part of the permitting for Whitcomb Pines, which is also a 40B project, and people seem to forget that, it's a comprehensive permit project. As part of the permitting, Whitcomb Pines deeded over, or actually encumbered, it's approximately 11 acres of land on these two parcels here with conservation restrictions, so they're to be maintained in perpetuity for conservation purposes. That land is still owned by Whitcomb Pines, can't be developed because of the CRs. But what we're proposing to do is to convey that additional 11 acres to the town also. The advantage to the town is that the town then would be able to control those properties, potentially modify the CRs if it determined that there was another use that they thought was appropriate for the use of that. So in return for 1 acres of a portion of the Ellis property, proposing a total of 27 acres of land to the town, of which a large portion of that 16-acre parcel is developable. So essentially giving you the second project to the town, so there'll be no further development on this project. The obvious benefits are, one, we eliminate the access over Booth Hill Road and the potential traffic impacts to people. There have been some suggestions that, well, Booth Hill Road is not appropriate for an access of a project of this size. We have a preliminary traffic study by a traffic engineer that says that Booth Hill Road is indeed sufficient, may likely need to be improved in some form in order to make it safer, but it is sufficient access to support this project. However, if town meeting agrees to grant us the land swap, we will eliminate impacts to that Booth Hill Road neighborhood with traffic then going from Chief Justice Cushing Highway. From a traffic perspective, we think this is a safer alternative. While the lines of sight on Booth Hill Road are sufficient to do this project, we think it certainly would be better on 3A. This also would eliminate the wetland crossings and the wetland impacts. In fact, with the land swap, we're not going to be impacting any wetlands. The project's located more than 50 feet from those two wetland systems. Additionally, you may recall that that access drive comes closer to Merritt Woods in this area here. By relocating it here, we move that access drive further away from Merritt Woods. So again, we don't think that the proposed project is going to have a negative impact, but we certainly are doing what we can to avoid impacts to the neighbors. And the obvious benefit of the town acquires this parcel, a 16-acre parcel with substantial uplands, and has complete control over the CR parcel. And again, the town will decide ultimately what it wants to do with those 27 acres of land. And so obviously we're here to answer any questions. I mean, this project as a whole, and it's been interesting going through the process of speaking with the boards and hearing comments. There are many misconceptions regarding affordable housing projects. This is a rental project, so 25% of the units will be for low to moderate income. This isn't Section 8 housing. This isn't subsidized housing. What that means is that those units will be rented to people whose income doesn't exceed 80% of the median household income in Scituate. I was surprised that I looked at some recent data. The median household income, I believe, in Scituate is close to $90,000. So the community is getting more affluent. This is going to be, this is envisioned as a high-level rental project similar to the Avalon projects in Hingham and in Cohasset. And is entirely consistent with the town's own economic development study that came out in 2014. And so there was a discussion this evening about the need for new housing. I believe the study said that by 2030, we're going to need 700 additional housing units in order to accommodate growth in Scituate. And it's a specific kind of housing unit. The study called for rental housing as opposed to single family. Where the need is young adults who want to stay in the community. Unfortunately, there are very few opportunities for young adults to stay in Scituate because they can't afford to buy a single family house, particularly with home values increasing. And again, the older residents in our community who want to stay, who want to sell their single family homes, who want to enjoy the town. And the economic development study said exactly that we need rental housing, we need more units, and those units need to be tailored to young adults and older residents. There will be 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom. The state requires now, I believe it's a minimum of 10% of 3-bedroom units, although we understand that might be negotiable with mass housing because there's a clear need for 1 and 2 bedroom. So it's a high-end product. Yes, 25% will be affordable, but 75% of these units are going to be market rate units. From the town's perspective, the town gets to count all of those units towards your affordable count. Scituate presently has a little over 4% affordable. The target is obviously 10%. This project is not going to get the town to 10%, but it's going to get you much closer than you would otherwise. It's the ideal location for a project like this. As I mentioned, we think that with the conceptual design, you're not even going to be able to see this project from the surrounding neighborhoods and from Route 38. So again, we're happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Board? Sean?
Did you say all 252 would go towards our
That's
affordable
correct.
component? Not just the 25% of 252?
Right. We understand all of them because it's a rental project.
All apartments go towards it.
Okay, all right. I just got a question, you had an engineer tell you that this project could enter and exit from Booth Hill Road. 252 units, about how many cars is that per unit? 2?
I'm going to defer to Steve, who, if you remember the traffic study.
Yeah, I don't know how they figure that per unit. It's at least 1.
All right.
Maybe
Okay.
1.5.
Let's just call it 1, 250.
Yeah.
250 cars are going to leave that project. 50% you only have two ways to go. Some are gonna go right, 50% will go left. 125 cars getting out to 3A at that dangerous intersection. That's the only thing that I learned tonight here. I knew, we've sat down and listened to this project many times, but that is a huge impact. I don't think you could do anything to Booth Hill Road and 3A to make that, other than widening both roads, to make that a safe intersection. I'm sorry.
Sure. I've got two responses, Mr. Harris. First, we have to go through the complete permitting project. What's being presented at town meeting is not approval of the project. It's simply approval of the land swap to facilitate, we think, a better access.
And I agree, but just...
And that leads to some of the confusion, because people may think they're coming to town meeting to approve a 40B project, which is not the case. As you know, we need to go to Mass Housing first for letter of eligibility. We're in the process of preparing that application, which will be submitted shortly. And we hope to have the letter of eligibility prior to town meeting. That's our goal. But this has to go through a full vetting, full public hearing process. A comprehensive permit application needs to be submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I assume there will be numerous public hearings. I'm guessing that the town's going to reach out and hire their own traffic consultant in order to peer review whatever material we submitted. We'll obviously have to go to Conservation Commission for an order of conditions for the project. So there's another whole process to go forward to review that. The second point I want to make is that obviously before my clients invested all of this time, effort, and money, they needed to assure themselves that in fact that access is sufficient over Booth Hill Road, and they've done so. So we're not suggesting that this project is not going to have traffic impacts on the Booth Hill Road neighborhood. That's why we've gone through such length and giving up a very valuable piece of land to the town in order to avoid those impacts and put that traffic onto 3A. So we hear you loud and clear. We understand that concern. I just want to point out that that will ultimately be vetted during the comprehensive permit process.
Sure. Thank you for that clarification. And to those points that you raised, I think we're still putting the cart before the horse here. I'd like to see it go through conservation, planning, and zoning before any type of generous land swap is agreed to. That's personally where I sit on this. I'd like to see if it really is going to be 250 units. You had expressed a few moments ago that that was still to be determined based on the water treatment plant that you're putting on site as well. I'm extremely concerned about the access out onto Booth Hill Road, so obviously if we could make that better, I certainly would want to, but I would want to wait to see about the other permitting process first.
No, and thank you. The problem with that is that we need to submit a plan to Mass Housing and put together extensive engineering to submit a comprehensive permit project. We can't afford to do that twice. So we need to know what our access is prior to completing all of that engineering. That's why we're trying to front load this by putting the land swap first. So that's the practical business issue. As you can appreciate, the engineering for this project is quite substantial. So we thought logically, let's get access squared away and then we can design around the project. With respect to the unit count, we estimate, at the low end, it's still going to be 220 some odd units on the low end, 252 units on the high end, probably fall within that range.
Tony? With the new access on 3A, is there a change to the design of the buildings?
Oh, well, in minor respects. So it's going to come as no surprise that when we did this conceptual design, we took into consideration the possibility of securing the alternative access. So as you can see, the alternative access would essentially come off in this direction where this parking area is. So perhaps the buildings might shift in minor respects, but this was designed in the hopes that we could, in fact, secure access from 3A. So the general conceptual design shouldn't change, it will be tweaked in minor respects.
And is there any thought to having 2 entry points?
Oh, well, the reason we've designed and proposed the boulevard entrance is to have just one entrance, because again, if we have access over 3A, we don't want to construct this. And so this is designed, I mean, we have to put a design in front of the fire chief, obviously, when we go through the comprehensive permit project. We understand that this type of design is sufficient to create emergency access. So it's designed such that if, you know, if 2 of the lanes on one side are blocked, you still can make use of the other 2 lanes. And this type of design has been used in other towns to solve that problem. I mean, could the fire chief come back and say, well, that's still not sufficient, I need another access way? I mean, we would candidly, we don't want to do that. We don't want to build a secondary access. Conceptually, could he require that we actually do something on Booth Hill Road? It's a possibility. I mean, we need to present a design to the fire chief beforehand. That would only be used for emergency access, would not be improved to the level that you would need for a main access way. And we do our best to discourage the fire chief that we would need that. Again, the sort of boulevard, a double-barreled boulevard has been
So
used.
no, I guess to Sean's point, you know, if you've got 252 to 400 cars going out onto 3A, if there were 2 avenues to get out of the facility, it'd be less congested. Is that what you're?
Well, there'll be 2 lanes on each side. Keep in mind, Chief Justice Cushing Highway is a state highway, so any changes to Route 3A are going to be covered by Mass Highway. We have no control over that, and unfortunately, neither does the town. I mean, conceptually, do we have a problem with a new light there? No. That's ultimately going to be a decision for Mass Highway. We anticipate that what they'll do is they'll want to see deceleration lanes to be able to make the right-hand turn into the main drive and things like that. So we anticipate that there'll be some improvements. But ultimately, that's neither in our control nor in the town's control. And that's one of the frustrations when you do a design like this. It'll be for Mass Highway to decide, you know, what's going to be the infrastructure along Chief Justice Cushing Highway.
Now, did Concom or planning, what was their feedback in terms of whether the project could go or not go forward as designed this way?
Well, I know that Mr. Limbach is here, so I'm not going to speak for the planning board. The Conservation Commission, I think, recognized that, at least with respect to the wetlands crossings, that this project is doable. Again, it's less than 5,000 square feet of alteration. We're proposing on-site replication. People have this notion that you can't alter wetlands under the Wetlands Protection Act. Indeed, you can, provided that you replicate on-site. We don't want to alter those wetlands, which is why we're proposing the alternative access. We'd like to leave this undisturbed. If we leave this undisturbed, it's an additional 5 acres of undisturbed, wetlands with portions of upland forest here. But we'd like to leave it as is and not alter it. But you can do this project.
And if I can just ask the planning, did you guys concur with that this project would?
We looked at it in slightly different format than I think Concom does, because this project isn't actually going to be coming in front of us.
It's a 40B.
More generalized than code CBA. I think we expressed the same concerns that you guys have done in terms of the entrance and what the impact is, particularly at Booth Hill. You're looking at a significant amount. We also looked at the timing and the need of how it would actually be constructed, so that we can see if there's going to be a buildup in terms of that traffic coming out, replacing the infrastructure, building in the units.
Right. But there was no indication that you would have that this project could not be built with Booth Hill access?
That's not having seen the traffic report, but taking the word for it, that it appears to be viable.
I mean, I guess that's, having gone through the communications that we have, that's our concern. We want to have the safest project. We don't want to facilitate the project, but we want to have the safest project and and get whatever we could for the town and for that whole neighborhood, particularly, you know, which was the big part of our negotiation. So, you know, that was our, you know, that was kind of the reason why we had you go back and talk to these people to find out whether there's anything that we missed, you know, in our thought process. So, that's all.
Well, let me add some 2 cents. First and foremost, I know I sat on the zoning board when, Jack, you came on Whitcomb Pines. It was what we called a friendly 40B between the presentation and everything it was facilitated, and it was one of the only ones that I sat on that was frankly friendly, and it worked out. It was a good project for the town. Mr. Callahan, I've heard a lot of things about work you've done. You were not a part of that project when it first came before the zoning board, but I know various projects, and people have indicated that they've spoken very highly of your projects. The issue that I'm tussling with is the access, specifically if the town were to grant this at this point in time. The question that's going to be raised by everybody is, well, you're facilitating this project for you. Why are you doing it? Frankly, maybe they have to build smaller units, less numbers, instead of having the number of 200 units. And so I think the criticism's out there saying, well, the board is shall we say, not encouraging, but facilitating this project to make it viable. The issue that I look at is, I'm not sure what the zoning board's going to do. I think traffic is the issue. You got the traffic report, peer review is going to look at it, and having sat on a number of 40B projects, you know, if it's approved, it's going to be approved. Having said that, what I think is a good thing is probably having access instead of not on Booth Hill Road, if it's going to be approved, but to have it on 3A. Makes perfect sense. And because of all the numbers of traffics coming and going. I have to tell you, you know, that's the project. It looks like a pool, and is that I know this is just a rendering at this point, but facility, I guess, for the community building, which I think is a great thing, because none of the other projects I've ever seen has ever put one. In fact, the only thing one project put in was a bocce ball court, and that was the extent of it, nothing else. They plastered everything with condo units. Bill, you sat on that one with me, I remember. 2, I take that back. Great, we could play in opposite directions. So, I mean, conceptually it looks great. That's what the zoning board's going to have to deal with. I think the way that I look at it is that filing with the zoning board going forward, I know you're concerned about the engineering. I hate to say it, that's not my concern, the engineering, because I'd be inclined to say file with the zoning board, start the process, start your dialogue, go vetting it out. If it turns out that, you know, the board is going to approve it, I would certainly say at that point, I would tell the town that it would be foolish not to take this deal to swap 17 acres, no, 16 plus 11, 27 acres for 1.8, and it's not the town forest. I think it's a no-brainer in that situation. But obviously, you're going before the board, or not the board, the town, try to get that recommendation. You're going to have to convince them to do it. But I think that's how I'm looking at it. I mean, I feel at this point, you know, file with zoning, get it going, see what they want. I know you're going to incur more costs with the engineering with the roadway going out to Booth Hill, but I think all the neighbors, if they realize if it's going to happen, they're going to probably get behind this and say, put it on 3A. It's an added cost to both of you to do the engineering. But to go through the land there, that's 1.8 acres to get to the parking lot, maybe you might have to shift the building down. I wouldn't anticipate engineering it will be a cost, I know, but, you know, $5,000, $10,000, given the size of the project. That's how I'm looking at it.
I think, if I could, we're submitting to the state with the Booth Hill, with that plan. We don't need a complete engineered set of drawings, they just need conceptuals. I think in the meantime, so we're expecting to get a letter of eligibility, and then we will proceed to the zoning board.
And I have to say, you know, I know the size, we just had the affordable housing, we had the housing plan. Laura was in last meeting, I think it was, right? And we were talking about it. The fact that you're adding 200 units, 250 units, on top of 60 on Stockbridge Road, that's going to put us up to 310. I didn't even factor in Herring Brook, which is another 50 or 30. I mean, soon enough, it's about 400 50 to get us at that 10% mark. This would go a long way, and if it's done the right way, which I know the work you both have done, it'll be nice. It will be done. It's big. I mean, I'm not saying I want 8 massive buildings, 3 stories with 20 to 30 units, and most people don't. And I suspect Merritt Woods doesn't, and I suspect the fact that it's kind of built into this area with buffers, at least the neighbors will be appreciative of the fact they can't see it, they'll hear it, but again, it's land, it's what you're proceeding to do.
You know, again, if I could, we understand it's a large project. When Adam referenced Cohasset Avalon, that's 242 units, very similar, same type of an entrance. I don't know how many, you know, the traffic, I'm sure, it gets in and out there okay. I'm sure, you know.
Depends
I
on
think
the
that's
degree.
debatable.
That's correct, right.
Yeah, okay, well, it is a good comparison. I think the biggest difference with us, we're gonna be kind of tucked in the woods, and we're not as tall a building. That's a tall site, number one. We're no more than 3-story. They're 3 and 4. They have 2 different products there, but it is a lot alike, and that is also a 40B. A lot of people don't know.
John?
Are those all rentals up there?
Yes.
Are they?
Yes.
Can I ask one more question? Are you planning on any of them to be 3-bedroom, because that was a significant point of the housing production plan?
Yes, there's a Mass Housing has a policy that requires all affordable projects to have 10% 3-bedroom units, although we understand that that's it's for discussion with Mass Housing, but there's a desire for 3 bedrooms.
And you said it's predominantly 1 and 2, though?
Correct. From a marketing point of view, again, you know, just from our market studies, we don't see a great desire for 3-bedroom units. As I mentioned, the target market are sort of young adults and older adults. So 3 bedrooms aren't really, at least from a market perspective, you know, that valuable. Having said that, Mass Housing is requiring 3-bedroom units, and will comply with those.
And just one last thing to repeat, the piece of property that is in the negotiations, there was a 40B proposed for there for 60-plus units as well. Is that correct on the?
Correct. You may recall, and I think we've mentioned it, some of the others, I mean, the swap parcel, the 16-acre parcel, has a wetland system. It's connected to the wetland system here at the bottom here, but 2/3 of this are uplands, and, you know, we've done a preliminary study where you could get up to 60 additional units there. And so when the board asked Jack and Steve for the big ask, because obviously this is a lot to ask the Board of Selectmen, we essentially, they agreed to give you the second phase of this project, give the town the second phase of this project. Mr. Denny, I mean, we've been proceeding in the spirit of this being a 40B. I know Jack's been working on this for well over a year. There were many meetings prior to us coming forward last time for full town meeting with the land swap. We've obviously expending a lot of time and effort reaching out to the community. Our desire is to work with the town because as Steve has mentioned, we recognize that this is a big project with potential impacts, and so we'll continue to work with the town. But from a project sequencing point of view, it makes sense to secure your access before you submit an application for a comprehensive permit, because it's very difficult later on to be in that process and then to change your project.
I agree. I know what the attempt to do it makes sense. Looking up here, I just know that I think if people perceive, are we giving access or is the town going to give access to enable you? Sorry to say it, but that's really what they're going to be thinking. And the reality is at the end of this, you know, if they find out that it's all going on Booth Hill Road, that's where it's going, they'll be the first ones to say, well, let's go back to that proposal. And that's where I'm saying to you, if that's what's going to happen, I certainly would say absolutely connect it to 3A at that point. And I'm only saying that because we're not the ones who are going to deliberate and vote on the project, because that's the zoning board's purview. And I know what the zoning board's going to say. We don't have that before us. We have to take the project the way it is. I certainly would say that you have been very, very open with trying to find out and talk, more so than any other 40B that I've seen, based on your going to the zoning board or the planning and conservation and trying to look at this. And you've been, I know you gentlemen have been that way, and you'll continue to be that way. But I just say that I think you do it. File, get going, and then, but I know myself, I'm certainly open in the future if discussing it with zoning. If zoning says, yeah, this project's going in, I'd be like the first one to say, people, you should really accept this. It's not town forest, it's right on 3A. Yes, it's 1.8 acres, that's, uplands, but you're gonna get a huge benefit of 27 acres. Granted, 11 of it is wetlands, but that's another piece to the larger puzzle that we've been filling in for open space in the whole West End. And so I see a benefit for the town. It's just a question of, can you convince the residents at town meeting to do it?
No, and we understand that challenge, and you make a great point. These parcels down here are already owned by the town, so essentially you're creating one whole corridor all the way from 3A to Clap Road. So we recognize that we need to go to town meeting and convince town meeting that this is a good idea, and we're going to continue our efforts to reach out to the community. We're not asking this board for your support of a 40B project. What we are asking is your support for a land swap to eliminate access on Booth Hill Road. Candidly, we think we can do this project on Booth Hill Road, and there is some concern that if we get too far into the permitting process, the ship may have sailed as to exploring alternatives. I mean, I'm trying to express this in a way that we're not in any position to impose ourselves on this board or the town. But as you know, in the permitting process, at some point, you can't make changes for a project of this size. So we'd rather address the issue up front. We're not asking the board to say, great, we love 40B projects. We're simply asking the board to recognize that this is a better alternative than access on Booth Hill Road.
Mr. Limbacher and then Mr. Fitzgerald, I'll get to you. He had his hand up. Actually, you had it earlier, and then he had it.
Go ahead, Bill. I'll defer to you.
Do it before you. All right. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Would it be possible for the selectman or the developer to have in one site or one place information? I'm just a neighbor on Booth Hill Road, and I'm getting calls from 50 people, and I'm not cognizant of when all the meetings are, but would it be possible to have, like, someplace that we could all go to? Because it's just starting to get to the neighborhood what's going to happen here, and there's a lot of people that live there. So if we have one place to go
Sure.
to.
If I might, we're working on that. We recognize that we need to get the word out. We've got essentially a little over a month before town meeting, and that's a wonderful idea. So we've actually identified that as something to do. I don't know whether it's a website or some sort of social media page or pages, but our desire is to create, one repository. We've talked about, on the town's website, when we get to the project, creating perhaps a separate, page which has project information. We haven't talked about anyone about doing it with respect to the land swap. So
I'd be reluctant to do anything on the town until something's
Understood.
officially filed. Once it's filed, then I'd say with zoning, there should be something there. I would be probably beneficial to put something, Facebook or Twitter, or your own, just so that people know it. I mean.
No, it's an excellent idea. We identified it and we're working on it.
Bill?
Well, I have one more.
Oh, Tim.
Sorry.
You said one. Go ahead.
Is the access on Booth Hill, having done a few major projects in my life, I'm wondering if the access to Booth Hill Road limits the amount of qualification for the HAC that's going to happen versus if you said, look, we can bring it right out onto a state road, not a problem. Okay, go ahead with 260 units versus 125 if you have to use Booth Hill. Okay.
That's what I was saying. I'm not sure that's the question. I think I don't know the answer. All right.
Well, again, we have performed preliminary traffic studies that say that Booth Hill Road is sufficient, but again, we'll need to do, obviously, comprehensive traffic studies, all of that will be peer reviewed by the town, and we'll have to substantiate that.
Bill?
Yeah, I think with the information you got now, you're trying to make an intuitive judgment as to whether 3A is better than Blue Hill. The piece that you really need is a sense of what the same level of traffic study done on Blue Hill for 3A. Then you've got a comparison in terms of what that access would be in both locations. And I would think that that would be a part, that where you'd be in front of the planning board, that's a part I'd be looking for before I made a decision.
And we had the traffic engineer take a look at 3A, and again, Steve, you're...
Yeah, we'd be expecting a project like this before, like Adam talked about, de-acceleration lanes, acceleration lanes, and we've been asked 100 times, do you think it would trigger a light? Not our call, we'd certainly put a light in if the state deemed necessary, but the traffic engineer said, believe it or not, the state car count, they don't think that's a heavily traveled road. And it's, by cars in per day, what it is people are traveling pretty fast on it, which makes it unsafe. It's not the car trips per day. So, obviously, much better on 3A. He didn't see an issue either way with improvements to Booth Hill, or there'd be improvements to 3A as well. And that's just out on site, downloaded the project, talked the numbers. He took did his survey from state information that he knows, and just gave us, there's no showstoppers here. That's as preliminary as it was.
One thing that's going to happen is, with the public safety building being built, there's going to have to be some form of lighting that will stop traffic, which probably wasn't factored in. I forgot, I saw a traffic report further up. I want to say it's like 8,000 traffic trips a day averaged. It's a lot. I was shocked. But again, I think, the lighting, if there's going to be a light there, it will certainly slow traffic down. And I think certainly if you're at the top of the hill or close to, or you're on the, I'm not sure where you are on the crest or not, but certainly looking north, you'll have ample vision, looking.
The sight lines were great. And he did indicate, he said the safety center would probably trigger a control signal.
There has to be.
Which would be a flasher, all the time, and that would be controlled by the station. And that does, he says, that'll slow traffic down, just being a flashing light there.
Question? Bill?
I guess through you, is the information that you've got from the traffic engineers, is that something you can share?
Yeah, that's my question too.
We have a letter, yeah. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Just a letter?
That'd be helpful. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, yes.
Well, before I ask my question, I just want to make a comment about the yellow flashing light, because
Name and address?
Cindy Rooney, Booth Hill Road, I live right on the corner of Booth Hill and 3A, and that yellow flashing light does not slow anybody down. But my question is, actually, I'm a little bit confused as to all of the things that you've talked about, and the fact that you mentioned that it's possible that the fire chief might require access onto Booth Hill as well as 3A. If you're proposing to present this to the town to try and get them to approve this swap, will those questions all have been answered at that point, or will they still be up in the air?
So...
Well, there is no application in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals and no design presented. So I don't think that we're going to have an answer from the fire chief unless we can get some advisory opinion.
I doubt that.
I doubt that also.
I'm not going to get that from anyone in town until there's an actual application.
Having said that, the design of the entranceway, the double-barreled boulevard, was specifically specified here because it's been accepted in other towns of projects of similar size for fire safety purposes. And so that's why it's designed that way, because we believe that it will be acceptable to the fire chief. You asked me the question, is it possible that they might still, the chief might still require access over Booth Hill Road? It's certainly possible. Is it likely? We don't think so, but I wanted to accurately answer your question. We think that this is sufficient ingress and egress, and to limit the entranceway to one major entrance.
I have to comment on that because I think it is entirely likely that the chief would open up Booth Hill Road with a gate and have it chained to have fire access. I mean, we're having 225 units go in there. Scituate Trail is a perfect example of over a mile of homes in a cul-de-sac that has one egress onto 3A. So just speaking from a public safety perspective, not to throw any wrenches in the thing, that I absolutely think that public safety would insist to have a gated, locked, as we do in other areas in town, not for egress for permanent residents or whatever, but as a secondary access there. I think it would be foolhardy to think it might not be on the table, and I just have to be honest about that.
Yes, you had a side question. I got one over here from Mr. Bjorken.
Well, just following up with both things, as somebody who would perhaps support the land swap if it was being said to me that there would not be access on Booth Hill as a result of the land swap, and suddenly there was, I would not be very happy with that. And I would want some sort of answer, whether it was, what she suggests, that it would be a locked access just for...
If there was for public safety, they would have a locked access. The town would only have it, and it would only be for urgency. Imagine something had happened in the boulevard, the trucks couldn't get there. They need to have maybe another means of egress and ingress into the place. Or vice versa, if they needed to get people out of there, unlock it. But that, it would not be public if they went that way.
When you don't have the knowledge of it.
I agree, totally agree. That's why I say, it's kind of like, when it says the cart before the horse. The one thing is, you can see here, and you can see there's a lot of potential public benefit if it's going to be built, because you probably don't want it on Booth Hill. You'd rather get straight to 3A. But that's why I say filing the application with zoning, getting it actually going and seeing it. I certainly think this could be a good discussion towards the end of it. If it looks like it's going to be built, then, people in the neighborhood are going to say, please, can we do it the other way? But the risk we run is what Attorney Brodsky said. Sometimes, the die has been cast, they've already set it in motion, that's where they're going to do it. And that's the risk we run also, too. Steve?
And just, or if I might, even if the chief requires that emergency access, there aren't going to be cars using that every day. It would only be for fire truck.
Right. Steve, and then I think we're going to wrap it up because we got a lot more going.
First, Steve York, 15 Captain Daniel Litchfield Lane. First of all, I think the land swap is an awesome idea if the project is going forward. It seems like everybody's kind of in a stalemate here, and the simplest thing is have a traffic engineer do the study to find out, one, if it works on 3A, two, if it works on Booth Hill, and have a pre-review by somebody that they hire for the town to say that this project, from a traffic standpoint, will work on Booth Hill Road, and it will work on Route 3A. Because I think there's nobody in the room that's going to say, if this is approved, they want it to go through Booth Hill. The issue is, if you guys vote to do the land swap, and it makes the project work rather than not work, you all have bullseyes on you. So
we have it anyways.
Well, you're going to have bigger ones. But I think the issue is just get that traffic issue resolved. And if the project itself is going to work on Booth Hill, they're going to be the first ones to say put it on 3A. And the least expensive engineering that'll be done on this project is the traffic review. So if I was in their shoes, I would try and get that on the table right up front before town meeting, and have somebody review that and say, yes, they can get this project through on Booth Hill Road. And then you're going to have the answer that you're looking for, and I think everybody will come together at that point.
Thank you. Last one, Tim, because we're going to be here till 11 o'clock, and I can't do this.
That would not be the final word. The hack is the final word on whether the access onto Booth Hill or 3A works. It's not up to a traffic engineer. It's up to the committee that votes on this. So until we get a vote from them, everything is, again, just like it is right now. Whether we've done 10 traffic studies or not, I believe personally there's no difference between the studies being done, me not having them done. HAC has to make the decision. If they don't, then that's whatever.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we're not voting on anything tonight, gentlemen, but I do appreciate you coming in and presenting. At least, you know what you're up against in town meeting. I think a site would be helpful. You know,
Yeah, if you could consider Mr. Bjorklund's request, which is kind of what we're all saying, you know, if we had some piece of information that gave more weight towards it, Booth Hill being viable, I think it'll go
We
a long
understand.
way.
I mean, as a practical matter, it's impossible prior to town meeting to implement what Steve is suggesting, which is a traffic
Right.
study of both
gonna be-
streets and a peer review of the town. But we'll try and we'll see what information we can generate in the interim to provide more information to the town.
I would say the
It's a
Booth
wonderful
Hill- yeah.
suggestion, but it's simply not practical.
Yeah, between the two, the Booth Hill one is the one that's most important. You know, if the 3A one doesn't work, that's your problem. You know, although I imagine it's going to be better than the other side. But if, even that letter and any information you can get on the Booth Hill analysis so far would be great.
Adam, thank you. Gentlemen,
very much for your
so
time.
much. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on now. It's, you know, what time is it right now?
8:20.
8:20. So we just did the, we're on number 3, other articles, special town meeting, warrant articles, and planning board zoning articles. You know what? We've been sitting here since 6 o'clock. Let's take a 5-minute break and get started at 8:30. All right?
Sure.
All right, folks?
That's good.
Let's take a quick break. And then how about that? Calling the meeting back to order. I'm going to skip around the agenda. I'm going to go under new business. It's a discussion vote, one-day liquor license. It's for St. Mary's Choral Art Society of the South Shore. It's scheduled for March 21st from 7 p.m. until 9:30, and that is at St. Mary's Parish is what the choral group fundraiser is looking to be held. And with us this evening is
Sally Heckle.
Sally Heckle. Ms. Heckle, any
Come on
questions?
up.
Any
Do I have to
questions?
come sit up here?
Yeah, right for the mic, so at least we
Oh,
can
okay.
get you there.
All right.
It's from 7 to 9:30?
Yes.
Any questions from the board?
We should ask her something, she's been waiting.
I know.
Want me to tell you about it?
Yeah, tell us a little
Yes.
about it.
Cabaret with chocolate.
Well, let me tell you about the Choral Art Society of the South Shore. We rehearsed just down the road here in the First Trinitarian Church. In fact, I'm missing rehearsal right now.
Oh, no.
To be here because I'm the coordinator of the event this year. It's an annual fundraiser. It's a cabaret au chocolat. So there's lots of chocolate and wine, but we need the liquor license for the wine. And we raise the money for a scholarship. We've been doing this about 10 years. The chorus has been in existence for more than 55 years. And we do this fundraiser every year to provide $1,000 at least, a minimum scholarship to a local South Shore resident, high school graduate who's going on to college to study music. And we have people from all the way from down from Hull to Duxbury into Kingston, Norwell.
Where do you
represent the
primarily
whole coast.
perform?
We perform all over the South Shore. We've performed at the Scituate High School a couple of times, the St. Luke's right across the street. We've performed in Hingham, we've performed in Marshfield.
Just asking because we've got a huge performing arts center that's going to be built in the next 2 years over at the high school. So it'd be a
Okay,
nice
well, I'll take
location
that
for
back
you
to my
think about
chorus.
that going
Okay.
forward. Any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Motion?
Sure. Want me, do you want to?
Please.
I offered, and now I have to get my contacts right here. Move to grant St. Mary's one-day beer and wine license for the annual choral group fundraiser to be held at St. Mary's Parish on March 21st, 2015, from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much.
Thank you for your patience, too.
Thanks.
All right, so let's go back. Again, I'm going to skip around again. I'm going to be looking at the, is it the special town meeting warrant articles?
I thought we'd take the planning board first.
Oh, planning board.
So Mr.
All right.
Lindbacher and Mr. Harbottle don't have to.
Sure, so that's going to be the article for the zoning articles, the planning board zoning articles.
2 zoning articles, yes.
All right.
Is that this?
Let's talk fast, I'll get you back on schedule.
So come on up, Bill, come on up, Laura.
You can make the clock go back.
I didn't see the back.
I didn't, I was going to say, where's
Is this,
the,
I think it's in this piece that
The
we have
Kathy
today.
Curran thing.
Yeah, yeah.
aha, all right.
So
So what is the?
Laura, would you like to explain?
Okay.
Briefly?
The building height and setbacks has two main components. One is to make it so that when someone's elevating their house in the floodplain, as long as they don't increase the height or the floor area or the number of bedrooms, they can just measure from the sill to the ridge and make the height, work that way. So that if they're up, a couple feet above the height limit, this kind of gives them a pass on that. The purpose is to encourage people to elevate, which is what we want, to keep the houses out of the flood area. The second part of this has to do with when people want to just elevate their utilities. Some of the homes that are in the floodplain, as you know, they're on very small lots. There's not a lot of room. They can be built right out to the setbacks, so there's nowhere to put those little covered structures that have maybe the furnace or the hot water heater in them. So this would allow them to go halfway into the setback as long as the little addition is not any more than 50 square feet.
And I haven't read it. I'm assuming is that livable square feet, or is it just for utilities? I'm assuming it wouldn't be livable.
Just for utilities.
Bump out just utilities.
Yeah, okay. I'm only thinking like how somebody could say, hey, great, now I can bump out 50 feet and, make it habitable, and then the next moment say, oh, gee, Steve, you wouldn't do that, now would you? Don't think so. Seems straightforward. Any questions from the board?
Nope.
All right.
Okay,
Good.
great. You want me to do the second one?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah. You're on a roll, Laura. Stay with it. You're hot.
Cool. The planning board has had a number of accessory dwellings over the past couple of years where instead of being the kind of, smooth proposal that these things used to be, they've been very contentious. And they've also been larger. They've been maybe on small lots where you've got a second structure with the accessory dwelling and a primary structure that are getting to be close to the same size. And the people in the neighborhoods have been concerned, and the planning board has been concerned about these too, because it didn't seem like it was really in the spirit of what an accessory dwelling was supposed to be. Accessory dwelling is supposed to be a small, secondary kind of unit that isn't comparable in size to the main house. So what this article would do would be a couple of things. It would clarify by adding some definitions what a primary dwelling is, because that's still something that comes up and it's kind of confusing. But more importantly, it would add some language to define what a subordinate dwelling actually is. To say that it's subsidiary in mass and scale, and the visual relationship has to be consistent and architecturally similar in terms of materials, colors, and so on. So it would give that kind of general definition, and then it would also restrict accessory dwellings as to size. And there will always be somebody out there that maybe they're a contractor, or for some reason they're going to have a problem with that. But the planning board looked at the size of accessory dwellings in other towns. It tends to be limited. It was less than 800 square feet was the limit when we averaged like 35 towns that had limits. So this would be 900 square feet, or 40% of the floor area of the primary dwelling, whichever is less. So there'd be like a 900 square foot maximum on an accessory dwelling. But 900 square feet is a very reasonable, small two-bedroom house. So it's not like you're really squeezing somebody.
What we've had is situations, excuse me, Sean, but we had situations where you had a 3,000, 3,500 square foot house, that a person wanted to put an accessory dwelling on it. The accessory dwelling comes in to be in the neighborhood of 1,400 square feet. So from the appearances, technically you got an accessory dwelling, but from the appearances that you've got two houses on one lot, which is in effect what you've got.
When this was, John?
Yeah, go ahead.
When this was first proposed, it was, you really just, you probably had in mind 900 square feet, just something for an elderly parent or parents or something like that. So it's too bad this maybe wasn't put in right in the beginning. I understand what you're saying, Bill, and so.
Originally, we started out with accessory dwellings as to be basically an integral component of a single house.
Without any
And then we
maximum.
expanded it, because
Okay.
there was an opportunity to come back up where you had a separate structure, maybe a garage with an apartment underneath.
Okay.
Above, rather, to come
Right.
back up, so it was expanded to that.
Right.
And then, now what we've got is, we've got the capability of putting very, very large accessory dwellings.
Right.
What this controls this brings it down to a limit of 950 or 40%, whichever is less.
Right.
Yeah, we actually said 900, but it's still
900, okay.
not, really not very big. It's not really very small, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I lived in a 900 square foot house when I lived in Scituate, 2 bedrooms. It had been 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms were combined. Seemed like a reasonable size.
Tony?
I mean, I'm probably the layman on this, but why do we, what's the difference? Who cares if it's a 1,400 square foot addition? I mean, aren't we getting tax dollars for a more valuable piece of property?
Zoning, it says you have one house per lot.
Right. So you could rent, it would be a rental unit?
You'd absolutely be a rental unit. In other words, if you put an accessory dwelling in it, you can either live in the accessory dwelling or in a primary unit. You have your choice, but you have to be a resident of one of those two.
Right, so the owner's going to be living in the main one, they're going to rent out something above a garage or...
And then I'm building in a whole neighborhood of duplex houses on lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of changes the feel of a neighborhood.
Right.
At least that's what we were hearing back from people.
Maura? Question?
Nope, not right now.
Steve?
Yeah,
Steve Bjorklund of,
I've actually, 15
thank you.
I've seen a lot of these go through at meetings of the planning board, and I've been at some of the ones that have been contentious. And I think probably one of the worst ones was down the Ave area, where your average house down there might be 900 to 1,000 square feet on a 5,000 square foot lot, or even a 10,000 square foot lot. So when they were coming in, they were using the 750 square feet and basically building almost identical to what they had for the existing house on the lot. And I think that's the biggest problem. I see that being more of a problem from a town perspective than what you were just saying, Tony, about having a large house on a big estate lot somewhere. You maybe could put a little bit bigger unit, because it's not going to affect that many people. You're not going to stuff that on a small lot.
Right.
But I think this solves the biggest problem, which is get a maximum size, for the unit. So that if you're down the Ave area, it doesn't look like you have 2 houses on one lot.
Now, could you, if you had a big house with a lot of land and wanted a larger one, is there like a petition process that you could get a waiver for it, or no? The bylaw would be the bylaw would be?
Be variance from zoning board of
Variance.
appeals on a special permit, which you won't get.
You okay?
Question?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Could you explain, just because I'm not familiar with this, why an accessory dwelling in the business zoning district would be unrestricted to size?
Well, we were trying to encourage those because it's really a kind of a different situation than in a residential district. The planning board wanted to have people living in the business districts to shop, to, be there, to, sort of add some life to those areas, go to restaurants, go to, walk to the village market and so on. And where you don't have a single-family house, there's really nothing to relate, the accessory dwelling to. So instead of being with a single-family house, they're up above a business. So you want to kind of use the whole floor above a business for an accessory dwelling, or maybe put 2 in there. There is a limit, I believe it's three with any one structure. So there is still a limit to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Other
you.
questions, anybody?
Oh, nope.
I'm just going to comment. I remember the one that's down on the ABC streets. You mentioned the apps, but that one, and I could see how this bylaw would have drastically reduced the scope and the size of the project that was
That
allowed.
originally came in as 2 houses.
Yeah. And I saw that, and I was thinking, yeah, I could see this bylaw will make it more scaled. I've also seen it in another section of town. I was thinking, I think this is a good bylaw to go forward with.
Yeah, I think in terms of what the housing needs in town, it's a great bylaw.
Yeah, and that's the other thing it does encourage, which is good, but it's certainly within reason. So. All right, thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
thanks a lot.
All right, now moving back to,
Chair, Nancy and I will defer our 2 items so you can get to the budget reviews for Pam
All right,
and
so-
Mr. McConaughey.
we'll go to what was supposed to be scheduled at 8 o'clock, the FY16 departmental goals and budget reviews. The first one will be, what do we got here? 145, treasurer collector?
Yep.
Pam, that's you. Come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Where would you like me to start?
Well, let's take a look at the numbers. This year, we kind of,
So if you want to start on my budget first,
yeah, 145.
145.
Your
We tried
request
to-
for this year was $337,520.
Right.
The town administrators recommended a little bit more of $338,097. Last year's appropriation was $333,255. So it's an increase, basically about a little less than $5,000. That's what you're looking at.
So really, the increase is, we tried to stay level funded, but the increase is really in personal services. One of my part-time employees that now works 30 hours has been graciously accepted as 35 hours. So Kim Fonseca, one of my clerks in the office, will now be full-time, starting in FY16. That's pretty much the increase there. Through the expenses, there's in some and out some.
Yep.
The big decrease was the ambulance billing, which last year, that was our first time separating it from revenues, taking out the expense separately. And it was a guess, so we think we're getting a little closer now, since we've already done it a year. So those are really the only big changes in my budget.
How much revenue do we get in ambulance? How much do they actually collect?
Well,
Between 8 and 800,000.
yeah.
And we
that's-
pay them 36?
They get a percentage of what is billed. That's what the contract is.
Oh, so they're doing the whole billing services?
Yes.
So we just,
They just get it's 2 or 3%, I forget, of the
They
bill,
do all
the
electronic
billable, so
billing
they're
of those
incentivized.
vendors
2 or 3% of the bill?
And whatever the commitment is.
Yeah.
And that, but if we collect 80 and they get 36, so is that net after the, so we charge $500 for an ambulance run,
Probably a little bit more than that for a
1,000,
basic. Yeah.
whatever it is, yeah. $1,000 for an ambulance run. They bill it out, and then they collect it? How does it work out to be a
And they
third?
done it and done it. Yeah.
Not a third. They get 36,000, we're getting between 8 and 900,000.
Oh, 8, 900?
Yeah.
I thought you said 80,000.
No.
Next, I thought I heard 80.
No.
That's why I was like, wait a minute.
My apologies for my poor diction.
That would be confusing.
It's a substantial number,
Great job,
amount of
Amy.
money.
I heard 800.
That's right here.
I heard 80, I was like,
And the only thing, with the problem with the ambulance billing is, they try 90 days, and then after that, it becomes uncollectible, and they stop their process. Now it's going down to the deputy collector. He and she do the best they can, but it's tough to collect an ambulance bill.
It's
If
hard.
you're gonna get it in 90 days, you're gonna get it,
I guess you're called an ambulance chaser, right?
pretty much.
Well, they're
They're seniors and Medicare and, you know.
Pam, you gotta lighten up, that's what they call my profession. All right, let's move on to the next one, budget 914, contributory group insurance.
Okay, so this is the health insurance.
So, let me know when you get there.
Okay, I was kind of going, I like to go in numeric order, but I'll switch for you, John.
We're skipping all over tonight.
So, health insurance, as you know, is Mayflower Municipal Health Group. We work with them for our health insurance. Nancy Holt is now attending the Mayflower meetings, and she has requested a 3% increase from last year. She might know, if you have any more questions, you probably should direct them to Nancy. She could probably tell you a little bit more about.
So the request this year is $5,124,900. Last year's appropriation was $4,975,632, and the recommended amount from town administrator is the exact number you have requested. So it's an increase of approximately
3%.
3%.
Now, we've just gotten information from Mayflower Municipal that their fiscal 14 financials are done, and the fund balance, which was at $33 million, has just gone up by another $2.8 million. So whether or not 3% actually comes to fruition will be interesting. The next steering committee meeting will be March 11th. It's likely at that meeting they'll make their recommendations as to what they're looking for as an increase. They have been at 0% for the last 3 years. When the general board voted, which is that the entire membership voted those rates last year, there was the possibility of having to dip into the fund balance by up to as much as $9 million to make that happen. Right now, they're running about $2 million in the red, meaning they would have to dip in to the fund balance for $2 million to make that fiscal 15 even. It may go up as far as $4 million, but it's still far less than the 9. So this would be the first time they've ever actually said we might have to use fund balance, that they actually probably did use fund balance. We're not really sure how it's going to play out. It's possible they could come forward with another 0, or they may come up with some type of a smaller incremental increase. So it's something the Financial Forecast Committee is going to have to look at again. And we are certainly looking at it now because it's a big budget item. It's a $149,000 increase.
I was going to say, how much did they come up last year?
0.
And the year before that?
3 years of 0.
But we budgeted a 3% increase last year.
Last year, we only went from 4.9 million to 4,975. So we didn't go up that much.
Well, 4.818.
That's what we expended, that's not what we budgeted. We budgeted 4.9 even in fiscal 14. But we expended 4.8.
Because they came in lower than we thought they were?
No,
After the rates came in at 0, because they don't vote the rates until after, sometimes it's not even until after town meeting.
So if they vote them 0, will they come in at 4.818?
No, because.
Oh, there may be new employees.
That's right, that's what I was just going to say, that's expended. We had a lot of employee changes
Right.
in this year, a lot.
Okay. Other questions?
Nope.
All right, 910, pension, non-contributory.
Okay, so that is the one person we have left whose service began prior to the Plymouth County retirement system. We have one gentleman left. There wasn't any increases or changes to the plan this year. There's a $13,000 base and a 3% increase. That happens every year, so. We lost 2 of our elderly people last year, and Malcolm's left. I mean, Mr. Patterson's left.
I missed that. Questions?
Nope.
I often wonder if they were actually in the pension, whether he would have gotten more than being on the town, where he was.
Yeah.
All right, move on to the next one. It's 916, FICA, federal taxes.
Okay, so as you know, that's a prod of the people we hire. So it's based on salaries, and again, Nancy Holt suggested a 4% increase from last year. So that's what we did.
So the request is $652,115.11. Town administrator has recommended the exact number. Last year it was at $626,454, so that's the 4% increase.
And why a 4% increase?
We have contractual settlements for fiscal 16 for most of the town units at 2%, plus the Medicare, this is Medicare tax, and anyone that was hired after 1986 is subject to this, who works for a municipality. But so as our people retire that were hired prior to 1986, the people we replace them with are subject to this. Everyone we hire is now subject to this. So we get more employees who are subject to the tax. The payroll base is going up, and then you have steps and the like. And then we do have one unit that, should it settle, there will be retro payments, and all of that will be subject to Medicare tax. So we just want to make sure that we have sufficient funds to pay the federal government.
Great. Next one is 720, debt and interest. Going back.
Unless you want to do 9/11.
I'll do 9/11, why not? We're in the 900s. Which is the Plymouth County retirement.
Yeah, so, per the Plymouth County retirement, there was an 8% increase to cover their unfunded liability. So that was the increase. We paid out our contribution already, and we paid it all at once, as we've been doing the last several years, and we saved $82,000.
Do we know if they're going to go up again this year?
At least 8%.
It'll be 8% for fiscal 16. They've said that they will peg it at 8% at minimum until they get back to where they would have been had they given us that 20-plus something increase last year. So I would say at least plan on 8% for another 2 or 3 years minimum.
And this is $4,224,602. That's what's been requested, that's what's been recommended. Last year appropriation was $3,912,852. So, just out of curiosity, where does our money, the contribution to the Plymouth County, where does that budget come out of? Which money that we pay to the county commissioners?
That comes off the cherry sheet.
Off the cherry sheet.
Right out of our aid.
Funding aid.
We haven't seen that yet, obviously, what we're paying them yet.
It's about $82,000. They're allowed to go up 2.5% each year, and then they can petition the Director of Accounts to go up even more.
They evidently are having a huge deficit, so that's why I was curious if they're going to ask for more from us.
And we don't find out until the final cherry sheet comes out in the fall.
That's a discussion for another day. Let's go to 720, debt and interest.
Okay, so as you all know, we have some huge projects coming up for borrowing. We were going to do a big borrowing in March, but with everything else that's gone on in town and the interest rates seem to be staying low, we're not going to hurt the town by waiting a little bit. So Tricia and Nancy, myself, and the financial advisor will probably be having a meeting soon to decide how much we're going to borrow and when we're going to borrow, which will be before 90 days. You know, we told the townspeople that we would borrow the money as soon as possible, and that's what we'll do. We have 2 bonds that we're going to call early to pay them off early. We're going to add that into the borrowing. We have a small, we have that $9 million ban that we did last year that's coming due the end of this month. So we'll probably roll that ban and also put that into the big borrowing that we do in the next couple, 60 to 90 days. So I'll be presenting that. That ban goes for sale to the open market on March 11th. So I'll be presenting that to you guys
Next meeting.
next meeting.
St. Patrick's Day, I think, isn't it?
So,
Do you have one on St.
Yeah,
Patrick's
St.
Day? Yeah, we skipped.
Oh, we skipped.
You can go out for a green beer that night.
Somebody had a question. Tony?
yeah, so does this have the debt exclusion stuff in this? No?
Yes, it's in the total budget number because we have to appropriate it, but it'll be raised separately on the recap. Because it's outside of Proposition 2.5. That's why you're seeing it go from
Right, but
2.7 million up to 8.6 million.
But did the 2.7 have the debt exclusion in it?
It had the prior.
All the prior ones?
Yeah. Right.
But that's not going to tie to our budget number.
On the financial forecast, it doesn't tie, because on the financial forecast, we just look at what is within the
Right.
levy limit.
Right, so I guess that's what's important for us to understand, how much the different buckets go up. So just the regular general fund, the enterprise funds, and then debt exclusion. Is there any?
The ones that would be going up the most, if I can, Pam, I don't want to steal your thunder if you want to answer that, or if you want me to.
No, you go right ahead, Nancy.
The general fund is staying fairly level. It's within about $30,000 to $40,000 of last year. The water enterprise is going to take a jump because we'll be doing the first portion of the $22 million project. There'll be $7.2 million that will be in the bond. And then the other three large players are the library, the public safety, and the middle school, and all of those would be debt exclusions. And that makes up about $6 million of this $8.6 million that is
Right.
in front of you.
So can we get that? Is that in here somewhere? Can I?
I think it actually is. I think the way Pam has it broken down, it does show up. Go back.
Or maybe you can send it,
Yeah, well, either way.
yeah.
Actually, I think in the major budget components,
Yeah, I think it's there.
Pam has it spread out for you. Tax supported, non-exempt debt, taxes supported, exempt debt. And then the projected debt exclusion, which is 6.1 million.
Yeah, it'd be great to see like the last 14, 15, 16.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Pam and I can do that.
Great.
All right. 158, tax foreclosure.
Okay, so this is money that I have to collect my outstanding taxes, tax title. I take this, this is my baby, I take this very seriously. So in fiscal 15, there was 83 parcels that were to be filed for tax title, and I called every single person on that list. And I'm very proud to say that we only put 55 people in the paper, and we only had to file 28. So out of 83 parcels, we only filed for 28. I've already collected $383,000 for fiscal 15, and I'm expecting another $130,000 by the end of this month, beginning of next. I've sat with a lot of, because I don't get much money in my budget for this collection with my tax title attorney, I try to do it a lot on my own. So I'm working with a lot of the residents around payment plans, and I continue to do that, meet with people at least weekly. A lot of them come in and see me monthly. So.
And they're very appreciative. I've spoken with a few of them, and they really appreciate the efforts that you go through to help them out, so.
Thank you, Tony.
Questions? Just so you know, the request was for $39,000. It's recommended at $39,000. Last year, that was the same amount. It's $39,000.
So I just want to say that, there's lots of things that the town does to maximize the revenue that didn't exist years ago, so that we're able to support a lot of things that we never did before. And this is just one of them, that the revenue she's brought in the last 2 years by doing this is not something that was ever even done. And it's a real testament to her commitment to do that. And we just sold the house. You should tell them about that.
We did. We just sold the house at 15 Linda Lane. It was a great, we had 14 people that were ready to bid on the house. We had a great showing. It's not public knowledge yet because the the money hasn't transferred with the town yet, but we wanted a minimum bid of 114.4, and we ended up getting a bid of 162.5. So it's great. I was really pleased with it. You know, we had a lot of interest, so now that I have one under my belt, we'll continue to do that. But I don't like to take anybody's house away.
Right.
So-
This is after a long time of trying
It is.
to resolve it and trying to get it done
And
after
it's
years.
been
so it's not
sitting
like-
there for, you know, quite some time, and it became an eyesore to a really nice neighborhood. So now, the gentleman that bought it is a contractor, and I'm sure he'll make good on property.
So the reason we set the minimum bid, although the auctioneer advised against it, was because the 114.9 was what the town was owed in back taxes. So we want to ensure that we at least get that, and then whatever we get above is gravy for us, so that's extra and above.
We're not allowed to take any extra money, just what's owed to us, correct?
Nope, we own the house, we
We own
owned
the
it.
house,
This
we
wasn't a
sold
bank
it.
taking, we have owned that house for how long, Pam? A year and a half?
2 years, actually, a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
I think it's a month.
So we
First
get
I just
everything.
got here, we took it.
I didn't think we could,
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
maybe that's different if it's bank
It's different from a
All
bank,
right.
we own it outright.
Because when we foreclosed on it, we got the house in lieu of the taxes. And then we
Yeah.
liquidated
Okay.
the house, and we get whatever we get for it.
All right, right, yeah. I
And
just,
like Pam said, that's definitely probably going to be rehabilitated and probably more tax than we were receiving 12 years ago.
And the difference is just a general fund receipt that will flow out to free cash for next year.
So is that when the house goes to tax takings, it's recorded, now it's actually ours, and they have a year to pay it off? Is that it is before you actually auction it, or?
Well, there's a process that has to go through for the foreclosure. All the prior owners have to be, you know, notified, and there's a time period, and it has to be posted, and it has to, you know, this had all been done before, you know, so we hope to do that with some of the land we have, town land.
We have to insure it as soon as we own it and board it up and make sure it's safe. This is the third one we've done in 5 years, so we don't do a lot of them, fortunately.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at the town-owned land.
All right, well, good. That takes care of that.
Okay.
Pam, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to 149. Chris, Economic Development Committee, come on up.
Was it
Colin?
149?
Huh? Oh, Colin, you too, I'm sorry. All right.
Good to see you all again.
Likewise.
You guys?
Briefly, just update us on, for the people, what's transpired in the past year with the EDC, and how you guys have been busy.
Yes, and so a lot of things have been going on. As many may recall, the MAPC study has taken up a good chunk of this past fiscal year. Finally, feel like we completed that just around the end of the calendar year. So the other thing is that we have contracted with a marketing consultant who is on board and has been adding a tremendous amount of value. I'll say just a little extra color commentary on that. You know, I think we were very lucky to be able to come across Ted Brovitz. He is somebody who has a tremendous amount of experience in planning and economic development. Has worked for a number of big companies in this area, and has recently branched out on his own. And so this, I think, represents a good opportunity for him, and for us, he's somebody who's bringing a tremendous amount of that experience to bear for us. And he's already helping out in a number of different ways. One of the other things that we have been focusing on this fiscal year, and an area where he's been helpful already, is on the 40R proposal, which has been something that's been a hot topic over the last few months. One of the things that he did was fairly quickly put together an RFP to potentially be able to send that out to find design, a consultant to build those design standards. He's also, by the way, somebody with the kind of background who, could conceivably do that in the future. But he's got a lot of contacts. He's very familiar with the kinds of things that we're dealing with, so having him on board has been terrific. We'll talk more about that role as we look forward into the next fiscal year budget. So those have been really the major things that we've been focusing on. We are in the final phases of bringing on a marketing services consultant as well. That RFP has gone out. We have made a recommendation that's with Patricia, probably in her stack, coming back from vacation, but we're hoping to be able to wrap that up and have a design consultant on board fairly shortly. And so we'll be spending the last third of the fiscal year focusing on getting that resource up to speed, and am hoping that in this fiscal year that we can get a brand strategy put together for the town that we can then begin to socialize with the business community, with you folks, and that would really serve as the foundation then for actual marketing activities that we hope to launch and make tangible this next fiscal year.
Good. Your request this year is for $122,500, and the town administrator's recommended $93,500. The appropriated from last year was $91,500, and it looks as though the difference is in technical services primarily, it looks like.
Yeah, I think technical services is the line item where we have bucketed funding for the marketing consultant, Ted Brovitz, to continue his role moving forward, and then also funding for that marketing services firm. So as I mentioned, our hope is to be able to have a brand strategy put in place this fiscal year, but then that gives us, as I said, the opportunity to now start putting it into action. And some of the things that we've already talked about is signage design. So we know that the Chamber of Commerce is very interested in, they own the sign at the corner of 3A and
Henry Turner Bailey.
Henry Turner. And they are interested in doing something with that, in rehabbing it, putting up a new one, et cetera. And they're really anxious to get started on that. Our point of view is when you think about that sign, you think about other signage that's potentially needed in town. So, for example, the harbor charrette that was done a number of years ago for the harbor, recommended signage is one of the improvements for that area. We feel that it's important that our signage have a look and feel that fits together, and again ties into a brand that's consistent for signage, that's consistent for other ways that we want to brand and feature our town. So one of the things that we have talked to the Chamber of Commerce about is potentially designing the signage, then leaving that to them to take the responsibility for actually putting up a new sign or rehabilitating that sign based on some design guidelines that maybe we can provide through the leadership of the marketing consultant and with the services of the design firm. So, so signage design. A number of people in town attended the New England Boat Show recently. We've learned that that New England Boating, they feature a half-an-hour program that profiles harbor towns like Scituate. They're interested in exploring a partnership with us where we could maybe have create a half-an-hour program. I think that's very much in keeping with I think it was Chronicle program that you helped to design. So, so that's something that's kind of out there as an idea that we would ultimately need funding for if it were to move forward. One of the things when you think about the content that was created for the Chronicle program, if you think about content that would be created for a program on New England boating, is you now start to have content that you can repurpose in a lot of other different ways. Great for those channels, but now you can put that on a website. You can feature it in a variety of ways. So if we can start to create that body of content, that starts to give us flexibility with how we promote the town. Web content, search engine optimization, search engine marketing, or our online ways that we could be doing a better job, we believe, in marketing the town. And the other thing, which I may have spoken about before, is, our vision for marketing is to begin to market outside of Scituate, outside of, this 4 or 5 town area. And I personally feel like, there may be some really interesting opportunities in places like Boston and, the North End, and where single people are living in an urban environment but getting away on the weekends. And right now, they may be driving right past Scituate down to the Cape in the summer. They may be going up to Maine. They may go, going down to New York or the Berkshires. And so, we've got this, as everybody knows, kind of a hidden gem here, which is a heck of a lot more convenient than getting to the Cape. It's got enough amenities and enough things to do to spend certainly a day. And now with the train service working again on the weekends, there's a way for people who may not have, own automobiles to get down here for the day or for an overnight. So, exploring opportunities to promote our message, our brand outside of this area, I think, and I think the rest of the EDC feels, could be a big opportunity for us. And so our technical services line item, our original request included $80,000 to explore those kinds of marketing opportunities. Those would be costs that would be associated with like physically creating things.
Okay. Questions from the board? No. Just one thing I know, Chris, I want to meet with you, and I know that you and I failed to get together last week. I think it was a week before. I apologize. The Massachusetts Cultural Council with a cultural district, I know that we have an application that we're looking to submit, and is something I think could be a real benefit the EDC should think about. I know it's listed here, but I think that's something for Seaport District, Front Street. It's a great thing for the town to take a look at. And the other thing, it's funny because I chatted to these guys offline saying, gee, wouldn't it be nice, the Olympics and volleyball and this and that. But I was thinking about it after I read the Globe, and I was thinking, the biggest asset that we have is the port, sailboats. Wouldn't it be great if there was any way of, they're all looking around, I think it was in the Globe this Sunday, about looking for various sites. And I'm like,
for the sailing.
We got the best harbor, on the South Shore to get out to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Great if there was any opportunity for yachts to come in to be able to race out of here and be connected to the Olympics. Don't know whether that's a possibility, but to me that's probably the best bet. Try to get your Boston connection with, commerce and trying to get our name beyond the proverbial pale and get it much further internationally.
Well, and even though, that article is trying to secure events, what we could actually, the better tact might be secure the spectators. You get the high price yachts coming here, because you can get to Boston on the transit events.
You got it,
That's a
and
good
then
point.
come on
Or
out.
put their yachts in our harbor and
And go from there.
And, some of the things, you mentioned, the activities that have been going on this year and what's been happening with the Cultural Council application. We've looked at that before. We do support that. I've been involved in some of that before. We'd like to see that happen. Chris mentioned bringing Ted Grovitz on board. That's been huge to us, and he's only been on board for like a month.
Couple months.
Because, as you know, we're a volunteer board, and we get together once a month as we can and try to move these things forward. This past year, the MAPC study took a lot of time, and it was a fantastic study. And we had adopted the approach before that we wanted to move away from studying and then to implementing.
Yep.
And so we finished that and immediately moved into 40 yards, spent a lot of hours looking at that. And then our last meeting, we spent a lot of time, and I think we're going to spend a lot more in the next probably 2 meetings. How do we help our businesses after the storms? Winter's tough anyway. It's been incredibly hard this year. No traffic at all. Nobody's coming into the downtown. Is there anything we might do just to get the word out? We exist, and why don't you come see what we can do? But having somebody like Ted who's available, he's got some time to pull things together, to coordinate. He's talking to those businesses and making those relations happen. He's done cultural council work before too.
Good.
So that's been huge. So we're trying to move towards that implementation stage now. And that's why having these funds in place so that the product is there when things like this type of winter happen, we can turn on a dime and get that publicity out instead of having to spend the months to develop it first. So That's kind of where we are. And it's been sort of an exciting time. We're right on the cusp, I think, of turning into, effectiveness.
I think you started being, you've actually been effective.
We've added a couple of new people, and they've been tremendous additions. We're going to be, hopefully, you will be seeing an application for a 7th member who just submitted maybe just last week.
Okay.
Next meeting. So somebody who's relatively new to town, but who is really interested in the cause, and so I think will be another great addition.
What type of background do they have, Chris? I'm sorry.
Actually, marketing, and his wife is grew up in Scituate, and so they've come back. They have young kids, and so he's got a very relevant background, as I said, in marketing, and seems to have a lot of enthusiasm, and I think that's one of the common denominators across the group right now. And it's really, although the names and faces have changed over the last few years, it's been a constant. We've had a great group, and so we've got a group that we can really divide and conquer. I think the only trade-off is, the budget request is a little bit of a shot in the dark, having not built out, having not had the marketing services company on board, not being able to get a more accurate assessment of, what are the costs likely to be to begin to physically create things. And things like media, for example, if you wanted to consider, there is probably pretty inexpensive TV that we could use, that we could buy, and we potentially have, TV assets from the Chronicle work that's been done. Potentially, we can create some with the boating thing. TV, radio, that media is a little bit of a question mark, and so our budget, as it goes from 122 to 93 it's just a function, it'll just drive how much we can,
Well, that was actually
tangibly.
one of the reasons the request was reduced. I think that's a policy decision of the board, whether a municipality starts to do media buys. It's very different concept to have New England Boating, pay to develop something for us like the City View thing was. But when we're talking about this town paying taxpayer dollars to do media buys when there's a Chamber of Commerce and a Harbor Merchants Association and stuff like that, that's another level that the board's going to have to discuss, I think. So, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's unique in my experience for a community this size that would enter into that. Big communities have very robust economic development places do, but we said, you've made so much progress already, maybe, 6 months from now, we're talking about it.
Yeah, and I think
you make a good point, too, is, there's the Chamber and the Harbor Merchants. Anything we would do, we would want to make sure it's comprehensive. We tell the story of the town, not necessarily, it wouldn't be for a business.
Right. Right.
Right.
And that's why, even when we did the MAPC study, it was a big struggle to make sure it's developed on districts or villages. We have the harbor, we've got North Scituate, Humrock is part of that, so it tries to balance that out to make sure that all of those pieces are pulled together.
And that's why it's so great that you're doing the assisting with the branding.
Right.
Because that, theoretically could have bubbled up years ago, but because they're so disparate, I think it's hindering us in some ways.
Yeah, we have now a representative from the Harbor Merchants, and we have a representative from North Scituate, so, we've got people on the group who are, and, we're starting to meld those groups together, and there will hopefully be, some strength as things coalesce.
Sean, you had a question?
I was just, while you guys were talking about what you're doing, I just happened to think a little bit, and the other morning I was up early and flipped on the TV, and there was the film, Witches of Eastwick. What are your thoughts, and Tricia, with that movie they started, they did some filming, and what are your thoughts about something like that? That can only have all just positive reactions.
He's not here tonight, but he had reached out to the State Film Office and has been in touch with them, and there has been a tremendous amount of interest.
And I know Patricia has been active on that front, Monty has been active on that front, so yeah, I think there's definitely a feeling that there's opportunity for us in that area. Another thing I just want to mention, because it's something that we've been working on recently, and something that one of the members of our commission is kind of running with, and that is forestry management and opportunities through that to both generate revenue as well as to turn our town forests into more usable space. And so we're really in the early stages, but the point is that I think we're starting to create awareness in town, and as a result, people who happen to have those kinds of interests are calling and asking for some time with us at our meetings to share what they're working on. And frankly, that's an example of where we've been enlightened about opportunities that we didn't even know exist. And when you think about the development of the fire safety building, there's a lot of lumber that's gonna come out of there. And that's, it might not be a huge revenue opportunity, but, it's something that we certainly don't wanna pass up by mistake.
So if I may, some of that, we have license agreements for forestering on our conservation land, and when the public safety project is built, that's included as part of the bid, that the forested lumber is actually reduced over the overall bid because they get the value of that.
They'll take it
So
in.
that's standard in site clearing for construction.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
But, there's a lot of trees there, so, but the flip side is we lower the cost for construction for the overall.
The remaining 16 acres that we are hopeful that the school will then give it back to the town, we've talked about fields, a lot of fields for recreation that we're trying to be a great location, which puts you right into forest manager to be able to clear some.
And also, short of those kinds of development situations, you've got just that management where, you do the thinning of those forests. It makes the forests healthier and more enjoyable to be in, as well as then, takes that lumber out and creates, some kind of a revenue-generating opportunity.
Yeah, for the town forest, that probably hasn't had an active pruning program for a long time.
Right, and that's the type of, it was mentioned to us, it was brought to our attention, and it seems like there may be an opportunity there. I've talked to businesses that, because the state has passed regulations now that doesn't allow food waste to go into landfills, biomass and composting facilities are building up. They need that organic material, so they're willing to buy that and pay the prices for it. So there are opportunities coming about, and there might be something there for it.
Maura?
Sure, I just have two short things. One, I just want to say thank you for your efforts with the MAPC study. It's been enormously helpful to all of us, I think, as we evaluate how we move forward. And then just secondly, I noticed that you were instrumental in working with Bill Sheehan on the Wi-Fi in the harbor. Can you check on the landing page when folks come in and where that goes and the type of information that those boaters see first? I think we may need some help there as you have your new marketing person on board. I think that would be a good start of those voters, but thank you.
Yeah.
The only two comments I have, and then we're going to move on. I was over in Susie on Bria's on behalf of the board, and one of the things they referenced was that they wanted to touch base with the potential of one of their businesses relocating the Boston area, and Scituate certainly the area they were thinking about, so I was going to touch base with you on that. And the other thing is, I think certainly looking at, the MAPC, I know the concept of maybe another hotel in town is certainly something, in conjunction with the golf course, it's certainly something that would be worth looking at.
Yeah.
Because it will be very beneficial for the town going forward with the golfing, but also you can, as the MAPC report indicated, it's necessary, and it's something to maybe take a look at sooner rather than later. But, gentlemen, appreciate it very much. I'm sorry to keep you here so late. You should have
Thanks for
stayed
your
at home
time.
and then come up
Thank you.
afterwards.
Appreciate it.
But we appreciate it greatly.
Thanks.
Now we can go back, Tricia, to all of the other ones.
Chris, I probably have that Friday. I just
So,
saw it yesterday.
let's go to
I don't want to jam you up.
the
so I'll
tentative
get- I'll be
working
in
list
touch.
of the special town meeting, annual town meeting articles of 2015.
The warrant, and that is the warrant?
I think we're going right back to the special town meeting list.
This is a special town meeting draft warrant.
Guessing we're not doing
Chris and I
capital.
have been working on since yesterday. And with background information on each of these warrant articles. So, because we're not going to delay town meeting, everything has to be decided, as you know, March 10th, capital planning and advisory
missed a few meetings because of the weather, so they're working really hard to get all this done by next week, because the warrant has to go to the printer by next Friday morning, actually. So I don't know if you want to work off the background information, or we can just go through, there's 10. When we started doing this yesterday, there were 16, so we consolidated a few and some changed. And some of the things here are going to drive changes in the FY16 budget, which you'll see next week, and we'll draw up so we can run through those changes. So the first one, do you just want me to go through them, John? or-
Yeah, why not?
I did this, I think, 3 weeks ago, but just really quickly, and it's kind of changed. So, and some of them I alluded to earlier this evening, so we can run through them. Fiscal year unpaid bill, we get a little better every year. Ideally, we don't want to have any, but on a $62 million budget, we have one unpaid bill of $160. It's for outhouses for the DPW, if you want to know the specifics, but you have all that attached. Again, this is still a draft. You vote it next Tuesday. Article 2 we talked about is the $1.15 million for storm blizzard costs that will come out of stabilization. Article 3 is the snow removal deficit, again, $400,000. That's just snow removal. Article 4 is some budget balancing. That's $125,000. If you want to go to the information sheet under Article 4, we had a budgetary error. I think you recalled we talked about this at the special in the fall, where we underfunded utilities in the library as a budget error, but then they have not vacated the building and the timetable we estimated 2 years ago when we did this budget. So they need a little bit more. And most importantly, which you're going to see in several downtown departments, which we've budgeted for FY16, but are trying to capture in FY15, is that electrical rates have gone up considerably. 18% or 21%. So we're seeing impacts to that in several town budgets for a variety of reasons. So that amount for the library is $15,000. We have some challenges in the fire overtime account, which you'll be talking about later this evening, and that is $40,000 right now. We don't know if that's going to be enough through June 30th, but in terms of the operating budget for town meeting, we're going to move some money around that we have projected surpluses in, and the same is the case for the school budget. They have an enormous challenge with their sped budget this year and trying to close the gap. So we are able to offer them some assistance, which, to the school's credit, we haven't had to do. I mean, but, so I spoke with the superintendent today, and he was very glad that we were able to offer this amount of money. These are internal transfers. They're not out of free cash. We talked about free cash already. So that makes this a lot more difficult, because normally, you know, you can use free cash as your plugger. The sewer debt pay down, Nancy can probably explain or read verbatim. Why don't you try?
Sure.
Okay.
I asked the board and town meeting to rescind the $311,000 we had outstanding for the Squashcut sewer extension. We thought that the balance would come through the SRF funding, and there is a portion which is ineligible for SRF funding, which is this $175,093. So at this time, we just want to pay this down and be done with it. And that's what we're recommending be done from retained earnings.
Which article is that?
That's Article 7.
6.
5? 7. Oh, you're on 7, okay. That's why I'm like,
Just
numbers
skip
aren't.
around.
I'm
Like, the numbers aren't jiving here.
Oh, my-
Okay.
What, you want to do 5 and 6 first? Come
I'm
on.
sorry, I totally skipped over 5 and 6.
That's okay, I was just curious.
Okay, so
Why I wasn't following.
sewer is having a tremendous amount of challenges. We have the vacancy that we have still not filled in sewer superintendent, and so that's creating some overtime challenges. We've had some major discoveries, though, with the interim in there in terms of needed repairs. We have a significant situation with the Sand Hills pumping station and we did a temporary fix. Now we need to do a more permanent fix and have that second pump up and running. That's driving a good amount of that cost. Just give me 1 second. Make a liar out of me. How much? $47,000 for that, and,
Sewer electricity, though.
The electricity costs are just crippling in the sewer enterprise fund. The 21% increase, plus because of all of these equipment repairs that they're doing, especially with the pumps, to keep in DEP compliance, they're having to run some equipment 24/7, like the ultraviolet equipment, and it's just an enormous strain. So that's, right now, it's projected at $250,000 for additional use.
Don't we get, like, if the electricity's going up, why wouldn't we recognize that with the solar or the wind turbine?
So it's just gonna.
It's so
Earmarked.
excessive.
right, you've earmarked that revenue, $200,000 of it for the debt service.
No, I know, but I'm
But
saying
I-
if it goes up, then I would think that the prices go up, then
We might be
would
locked
get
in.
more. Or do we,
Oh, for us?
right.
Yes, we do, but there's the turnaround for that is quite slow.
Lagged.
It's a lagged time.
Don't we have a fixed rate that we pay for electricity?
No. We pay the general electricity rate. National Grid buys our electricity and sells it to other people, but we're not getting a subsidized electricity rate.
No, but Tony, like, I think his question was, is it a fixed price per kilowatt hour? And the answer you just said is no.
They buy it from us at a fixed and give us, what they pay us is at a fixed cost, but
So-
we're getting the same
It's
electricity
gone
bill.
back 19
Yeah.
cents to 23.5 cents.
Okay, but, so the money we generate from the two projects is flat?
It's a fixed
Or
rate.
fixed rate per kilowatt hour? Ooh,
So we're getting 7 cents from them, so our bill goes down 7 cents, or we
But
get...
it's still helping us tremendously, and actually, there was a press release that went out from Scituate Wind today to say that we are benefiting from that, but not to the extent that can cover these costs. And the plant was also running with overtime 24/7 with people there during all these storms, especially Sand Hills, which we're very
But
concerned
that's a different
about.
line
That's
item.
50,000, yeah. Oh, that's the other,
As they
yeah.
continue to make these repairs and bring these other pumps back online, then
The
those pumps
electricity.
will be on variable frequency drives, so they'll be able to come on and off and not stay on 24/7.
Yeah, that's
So is the
problem right now.
electrical, it's rate, not use, right?
It's both. Our use is up because
Right.
to keep in DEP compliance, we're having to run some of our measures constantly. Plus, with all of this, all these storms, we've got enormous stormwater infiltration, and that's just compounding the issue.
And we expect more when we get this melt, so we met today with Kevin and Rick Mosca, who's the acting down there, to get this work done as soon as possible, because, and we just don't know what we might find again when the snow melts. That's our big challenge all over town. We just don't know what we're gonna find. We've got 7 feet to melt, so, so it's a challenge. There are some challenges in the sewer, and also, we have new development coming along, so, yet again, there are some investments here that probably should have been made, and when a new set of eyes went in to look at them, we realized we had some challenges that couldn't work. So that's that. And water expenses, this one, unfortunately, is fairly easily explainable. We've had a couple of water main breaks in Hummerock, and Marshfield has raised its rate twice this year. So over 18%.
Twice this year?
Twice. We pay the commercial rate.
Is that
This-
standard in towns to increase their rate like that? Or I guess of commercial rates? It's called
Can we
gouging in my
renegotiate that?
world.
I
Jeez.
I'm not going to comment any further about that right now.
Let's get back to the
Beach stickers.
beach stickers. I've said this, I'm just
I think
irate when they
we are a
gouge us.
captive audience for Marshfield, and the alternatives to trying to do something there are very limited. However, at some point, I think we need to raise the question that, we just can't pay whatever is passed on to us. So twice in 1 year, we have a budget, and, as you can see, we're
So
funding these.
it cost us $124,000 because of water main breaks in Hummerock?
It's $50,000 for the assessment from Marshfield, which is made worse by the water main breaks because our usage goes up.
Right.
So we have to pay even more. We've only had one bill in so far. We have our second half bill that probably won't come until June, and that was going to be the nasty little surprise. So we're just trying to insulate ourselves from that surprise. The other portion is the same problem that Sewer Enterprise is having, which is the energy costs. They're also affected by this 21% increase. And they did have a well with electrical problems, so a well went down, and they had to run the plant more to bring the level up of the water. That well problem has been fixed, so that was like a 1-month problem, but it did.
This is Marshfield's well problem?
No, this is our problem. Our well that went down. So we have two problems going on in Water Enterprise: the electricity problem, similar to sewer, but not to the same level, and then the assessment, which is about what I'm estimating to be about $50,000. And we're estimating on the high side because we know we've had multiple water main breaks down in Hummerock, so we have that increased usage. Maybe
And we don't
less
know
than
what
that
we're going to
if it
find
does.
again. This is the other hidden cost of these storms, is that the taxing on the water and sewer infrastructure is such that it's another cost.
And if we've overestimated, it'll close back out to free cash.
I know, to retained earnings, yeah.
End of the fiscal year.
So just on this, I guess this information sheet is just for us, right? Because it reads $124,000 because of water breaks, particularly in Hummerock.
Yeah.
Which seems a little,
Yeah, it's only gone to you.
Yeah.
I was trying to get it to you tonight, so you didn't have to do this all next week. You can go through the special town meeting warrant very quickly. This is, the warrant's a draft, and this is a draft. I'll change the narrative before I send it to advisory tomorrow. Nancy actually didn't get to see the final reiteration. I was afraid to ask her anything else today, so.
I went home to see if I was leaking again.
8 and 9, we can combine the discussion about.
so just back to 7 for 1 second, because I wasn't looking at it.
Oh, yeah.
So this is $175,000 that's coming out of retained earning because it wasn't covered under,
The MWPAT considered these costs to be ineligible, so we couldn't finance it through
The
the Mass Water
low-interest
Pollution
loan.
Abatement Trust, where the bulk of the rest of the project was financed.
financed for the extension?
Right, so we,
So we bonded everything but that?
correct.
But this is going to be,
one piece
but it'll still be covered by the betterments?
Yes, it's still covered by the betterments. It's an existing cost that's out there.
Right.
So we got to pay
So
for
we're
it.
gonna pay it off,
rescinded
so
it.
we don't have to issue it as debt.
For example, what would that be? Why wouldn't they cover this? What do we do down there that they wouldn't?
There are some things that they won't cover. Sometimes it's some of the design and engineering, other times it's specific costs or things that they don't consider as part of the core project. So you always have a portion of a project that you finance through the state revolving fund that you will have to go out and issue.
Oh, this is
general
common.
funds. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Like I said, the bulk of it went through
Right,
them, but
right.
this is a piece that got left over.
All right, 8 and 9?
So 8 and 9, I think we might have talked a little bit of this when I ran through the articles 2 weeks ago. When we do a sewer, the town fronts all the money, and then after all the costs are in, we figure out what the betterment is, and we issue to the new connection, people who connect to the sewer. They have the option of paying it lump sum or over 20 years. We've gotten several people, as often the case with betterments, to pay lump sum, but we want to apportion that over the life of the debt service instead of keeping it current. In order to do that, though, we can't just do it. We have to create a separate stabilization fund so we can take that money and apportion it so we have it over the term of the debt. I've done this in a number of other communities, and therefore you don't have to do bonding or whatever. You're actually, planning for those future pay downs for the actual project that it paid for, instead of, we have all the Musquashikett money now, and we're going to use that to do something, and then it will be gone for the next project that comes along. When we discussed doing the $22 million in water, the board actually asked if they could increase the rate and the water rate, and the 10 cents of every so many would go to servicing the debt on the water department. You cannot do that, but in the same way, if we create a capital stabilization for water, then as you increase the rates to pay for these water projects, we can again apportion a sum of money into this stabilization fund to go towards the debt. Otherwise, your retained earnings long-term in your operating budget is really going to be impacted. You know, we're going to get a lot of money in. We don't want to be short-sighted. We want to plan, because we've got, you know, this is for the first 7 million. We don't quite know how that's going to flesh out yet, so we don't know what that amount's going to be. We do know what it is for sewer, so we can put that right in, create it and put it in. Water, we could probably do in the fall.
And the final one, energy rebate,
Yeah.
funding for school painting.
So the energy rebates, we received these from National Grid for the ESCO project, the efficiencies that were made in several different buildings. And we've gotten in now, I think,
100 and...
yeah, it was over 130,000, but it's
yeah.
even better than that now.
Yeah.
Hold on, just scroll up. Over $206,000. We spent $98,000 of it at the special town meeting for the hybrid cars and for the town hall boilers. We're proposing that town meeting approve $50,000 for painting of the windows at Jenkins. There's 200 windows, and this will help with the efficiency of those windows by sealing the cracks around them as well.
Yep.
So maybe that's how we should word this, is the sealing of the windows instead of the painting?
Well, they're being painted.
They're being painted.
From an energy aspect?
They're energy efficient
Yeah,
because
from
the
an
paint
energy
seals
aspect.
them. This was actually submitted as a capital request, but painting is not capital, so, well, $50,000 worth of painting.
I saw it on the Capitol, that's what I was wondering. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is, so whatever epoxy paint they're going to use is going to seal the window.
do both, okay.
Seal the windows.
The reason, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of these
Yeah, yeah.
rebates have been generated from the school building,
Sealing.
so.
I'll put painting and
And the rest of
sealing,
this will close out at the end of the fiscal year to free cash.
Okay.
The rest of the savings from that fund?
Yeah, the ESCO rebates, they're just a general fund receipt, so if they're not appropriated for something within the fiscal year, when they're received, they close out
To free cash.
So what would the balance be?
Probably about 56,000 will close out to free cash.
Can we get some sort of, like, maybe in a couple weeks or a month, get some sort of update on ESCO and where we stand on stuff? And
Yeah.
are we
That'd be helpful.
exceeding our,
Expectations?
yeah, you know, what they, is there some sort of audit that they do?
Yeah, phase one is done. Kevin, last time I talked to Kevin, he was working on what would be in phase two
Right.
projects. And
We can do that probably, maybe more like 6 weeks, Tony, because where we are right now is looking at what the phase two is going to be. And I think once we know what that is, we can come to you and tell you, and then you can do a year in review and stuff. Because,
But those are rebates, though, those aren't the actual savings,
Nope.
right?
No,
these
these
are
are
over and
savings.
above, yeah.
Yeah. These are just incentives, so like if you replaced your furnace, the
Yeah,
National Grid might send you a check.
just like in your home, it's an energy
Right, but they
thing.
said that this energy bill would go from 200 to 150 and guaranteed that, so we'd be able to see.
For under the ESCO?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, we have those savings. These are just what the,
Incentives.
the incentives from the gas, the electric
Right.
company that gives us because we're being energy efficient. So it's two different, this is just gravy on top.
But is that part of ESCO also?
This is a benefit of ESCO.
Yeah.
A
So
one-time
it's
benefit
not,
of ESCO.
it's not part of the
It's not
ESCO
The
audit?
actual
itself,
projects are an ongoing recouping.
Right.
I see.
And it's just like we get money from being a green community, and we use that money every year to offset our total ESCO. So even though our ESCO is 5.9 million and we've used 2.3, we keep using the green communities feeder to do some ESCO projects, so we keeping more left to do even more ESCO as we go forward. And now that we know that the middle school and the public safety building are going to be built, then that can let us concentrate on our other buildings that we know we're going to have to live with for 10 or 15 more or 20 more years.
Whatever happened to the electric plug-in? That's supposed to be up here.
Yes, we had to move the location because the school, it was going to go out here.
So now-
I forget, one's going at North Situate parking lot, and the other one I think is going to be moved out front here somewhere. I have, Al's in charge of that.
Just curious. All right.
So that's it, and I will make those changes.
Is that it for special
Yep.
town meeting? Okay. Anything that you want to discuss on the annual?
No, not tonight.
Not tonight, okay.
That's next week.
I figured as much.
You'll
but
have
it's
the
here, I'm
warrant, the
listening.
background
I just want to make
information
sure,
for your packet.
want to make sure I give you
Yeah.
all the opportunities to address tonight that you can, what you can. All right, so that takes care of that. Now we're going on to a discussion vote on the contract approvals for winter storm costs,
I
page
can
12 to
only sign a
27.
contract up to 50.
Right.
executive action? Yep, there should be an executive action in there.
It is.
All right. Do the first one for us?
The executive action is written just as, all together as one, so do you
Oh, I
want
do
me
them
to?
separately.
Is that okay?
Yep, do them separately.
You want to do them separately?
Yep.
Okay. Move that the board approve contracts for $75,000 for snow removal services for Mankiewicz Contracting.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain on that.
Second?
Move that the board approve contracts for $75,000 for snow removal services for Pond Corps.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain.
Move that the board,
Yep.
good?
No,
Sorry.
last one.
Yep. Move that the board approve contracts for $75,000 for snow removal services for Chuck Harris.
Second?
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's 3, 1 abstention. All right.
Okay, so moving on, I also have before you a contract for the PA Landers, if you see fit, for the cleanup from Storm Juno in Hummerock caused by the storm overwash. That was several feet of debris as well as snow and ice. We have bills for at least $60,000, but they're missing some of their bills that Kevin and Sean are working with them to get the balance of the bills. And Kevin believed that $85,000 would be the uppermost limit that they would need in order to fully pay them for this work.
Motion, questions? Motion?
That
Will the
is,
board approve a contract for $85,000 to PA Landers for heavy equipment and operators to clear the debris in the Humrock area related to Storm Juno?
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Okay, so moving on, this is one of the unexpected items that happened. We had the emergency purchase of a sidewalk machine. I called it a sidewalk plow in the executive action request. You'll have to excuse me for me not knowing the more technical term for the machinery, which is a small loader with snow blower and spreader attached, otherwise to the non-technical sidewalk plow. Our current Bobcat was under significant stress from trying to go through all the several feet of snow, and it caused it to go down for repairs. There was delays in getting parts for the machine, which caused more serious downtime. In the meantime, it was a public safety issue, not having sidewalks cleared, as you had a walk-in earlier in this meeting, seems like many hours ago, talking about how difficult it was for the sidewalks, and that was because that Bobcat was out of commission. So we did go out, and we were able to buy the last sidewalk plow, sidewalk machine available in Massachusetts from Tri-County Supply Company for $75,505.50. It has been delivered and is in use.
I've seen it.
Being used.
Yeah, it's one of those little snowplow ones, which is very nice, so that you don't get a chunk of stuff in your driveway, you might just get a little film.
Can steer it, too.
Yeah, so it's a nicer one. Additionally, the town purchased a snow blower attachment for its skidster, which is a loader that can be used to widen access for emergency vehicles and two-way traffic. So you may have seen this on some of the roads. It's like a sidewalk plow attached to a snow blower attached to a loader, so it chomps the snow as it goes along and then spits it onto the side. Again, not creating havoc with the, when you try to send a plow down to widen the street, sometimes you create more havoc than anything else, plus you irritate people by putting snow back into the driveway. This chomps it up and spits it out. So this is an extremely helpful attachment, and it's made Mike Breen a happier man. You wouldn't think he could get happier with not having several feet of snow, but this made him happy. So that was something else that we also had to purchase.
where are these coming from?
The sidewalk plow came from Tri-County Supply.
No, money.
This is going to come from the winter storm costs. This is going to have to be funded from
It was determined to be an
stabilization.
emergency procurement because we have, to the volume of snow, we discussed it with the emergency management director.
So this is
And it
part of
was-
that MEMA?
No, it's part of what we're going
Stabilization.
to have to pay out
Pay
of
out of
stabilization.
Move the board approve a contract for $75,505.50 with Tri-Town County Supply Inc. for purchase of sidewalk plow and contract with Southworth Milton for $9,500 for a snow blower attachment to skid steer.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous.
And we'll certainly, if there's an opportunity for us to put that in for reimbursement, because we had to get it because the other one was not in service, and this was a public safety issue, we're certainly going to do that. And the last one I have before you is for the emergency snow removal and ice removal from municipal building roofs that occurred last weekend. And that was due to the upcoming rain forecast. There was concern about this, that the snow loads had reached a critical level in some areas, and that's why it was qualified as an emergency procurement. We approached 11 different contractors. The building department was very busy contacting these people to see who was available and who had the proper insurance and manpower to be able to come in immediately and do this work, which was coordinated with Kevin Kelly and Bob Dillon in the facilities department. And we were able to find 4 firms that came in. Their rates were very similar. They were from $75 to $85 per hour. And the first one was Associate Roofing, which was $85 per hour for a total cost of $60,792.50. Kelleher Built Incorporated at a rate of $75 per hour for a total cost of $34,087. Jim Boynton Residential Construction at $75 for a total cost of $5,400. He came in first and did the areas that were identified as being most critical and were at the of the most concern to the building commissioner. And then Devlin Construction came in at a rate of $80 per hour for $9,360. So it was a total cost of $109,639.50 for the 4 contractors to come in and remove snow from the 6 school buildings and the library. The other buildings were able to be handled by staff. And as you are aware, it's very dangerous, and there's a significant liability for us to send our own employees up onto the roof, as I think there were 2 municipal employees that fell through skylights. One in Burlington and one somewhere else, because you can't see what you're on. So you certainly want someone that has, that was something we were very concerned with when we were talking to these contractors. Do you have general liability insurance and do you have workers' comp insurance? Because we certainly don't want to incur any more liability in trying to do this dangerous work. So you have 4 contracts for that as well.
Well,
Motion?
so,
Question?
when we say $85 an hour, is that per person?
Can't be per person.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Per person?
Per person, per hour.
It's incredibly expensive. And Marshfield, how
You
much
think?
did they have to spend for their school roof? They were incurring
I thought it was a couple hundred thousand.
$30,000 a day.
And I think Hingham, is it Hingham that did 200,000? There was another community that did a couple $100,000 for snow removal. But this is why people delay doing it, because it is so cost prohibitive. But as we've looked around locally, there's been several schools that are now closed for the season because they've had collapses or they've had damage.
There's a lot
I know you don't have this information, but I'm really curious how many folks were on each team. So maybe I'll ask Kevin, maybe the contractors.
Oh, I have the bills.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, some Boynton
curious.
brought in between 8 and
Sorry.
10, others had 3 and 4.
So Kelleher Built brought in 30, their bill says 35 guys, 35 people at 10 hours each at $75 an hour. They also brought in a bobcat and a crane. Devlin Construction had on February 21st, 5 men, 10 hours each. On February 22nd, 3 men at 5 hours each. On the 23rd, they had 4 men at 3 hours each. And then at the library, that was at one of the schools, at the library, they had 4 men for 6 hours. And on the 24th, they had 4 men for 4 hours. Associate Roofing, on Monday the 23rd, they were up at the high school. They had 18 men for 9.5 hours each. And they also had on the 20th, 21 men over at Wampatuck School for 3.5 hours each. And then on that Saturday, the 21st, 31 men at 10 hours each at Wampatuck. And then at the high school, on the Gates and the high school on February 22nd, they had 10 men for 12 hours each. And then the last one was Jim Boynton, and he had 9 men for 8 hours at $75 an hour. and that was at the high school. And that was on that Friday. And those were the two critical areas where we're up at the high school.
Thank you.
Sorry for that, it was kind of rapid. I hope you
Nope,
realized you were
I
writing it
got
down.
No, I got an idea.
She did
I was just
write it
curious.
All right, any other questions?
Motion?
Please.
Move the board approve the emergency expenditure.
Sorry. Can you tell we're getting tired of writing executive action requests?
Move the board approve the emergency expenditure of $109,639.50 to remove snow from municipal building roofs from February 20th, 2015 through February 23rd, 2015 as follows. Associate roofing, $85 an hour in the amount of $60,792.50. Kelleher Built Inc. at $75 per hour in the amount of $34,887. Jim Boynton Residential Construction, $75 an hour in the amount of $5,400. Devlin Construction, $80 an hour in the amount of $9,360, totaling $109,639.50.
Second. Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right.
My apologies for not bringing better news.
It's all right. This is good news. I mean, this is exactly, we knew that. So that people understand that we went really beyond to try to make sure, you know.
Well, John, you were the jinx, because you sent that email saying, I hope our roofs are okay, and I'm like, they're fine, we're checking them every day. And then I got the email that night from Neil, and he's like, we gotta do something.
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking the extra step, because I know that there are some neighboring towns that did not clear off some of their school roofs at the rate that we did, so.
Yeah.
Well,
The alternative would have been,
well, yeah, I mean, some was precautionary, but we had some serious concerns about the high school, so, and it's a testament to Neil and Bob Dylan and Kevin that we were able to get those roofers in.
Yeah.
Because what happened is we were doing fine, and it was school vacation week, and then we got that rain, and that rain really exceeded the loads.
Yeah.
All right, other business, correspondence. I don't think we have any, right? I didn't see any.
There was a letter there. There was, my computer died. There's a
Is
letter
this
from the
the
residents for Jenkins School.
Oh, the vinyl sidewalk.
vinyl sidewalk abutters?
oh,
That's okay, I
want me
know.
to summarize?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just the people on vinyl were against the CPC petition or article to put sidewalks on their street. They said they weren't informed in time and didn't have enough time to voice their opinion, and they want to work with the group to find the right way to do it, so.
And it's subsequently been withdrawn.
How's it?
Oh, it has?
Yeah.
Yeah, they withdrew it.
Yep.
So that's the correspondence. The next
Who withdrew?
we have is
The article.
approval of the minutes, which happens to be from February 3rd, 2015.
No, I can take that.
I had a motion to approve
Anyone
the
have that?
minutes.
Let me get the date here.
So the motion would sound like I approve the Board of Selectmen
Give me the
minutes
date.
for February 3rd, 2015.
Yes.
Somebody want to make that motion?
I did it. So moved.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Vignani, correct?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any other business anybody wants to reference or talk about?
Two very quick things. Number one, last week I mentioned our wrestling team, and I mentioned a couple of people who did well in the sectionals, and I left out inadvertently Rob McDonald, who actually won the state championship and is going to New England's. He's a senior this year, wrestled at 126 and had just a great season. So I didn't mean to leave him out. And unfortunately, the boys' basketball team lost a very close playoff game last week, and their season is ended, but they had a very successful season. And thanks for all the fun hours of watching them play. You want to mention we met with CPC
Yeah.
last night, or you want to do that?
Sure. I'll,
I don't have anything.
Sean? Nope. Yeah, on behalf of the board, we submitted an application to the CPC for a request of $600,000 to be utilized for renovation of the center building of Gates Middle School. It's the oldest portion of the building, and we were asking them to allocate $600,000 for this year and to hold it, because the town's going to have to make a decision on what it's going to do with Gates now that the middle school is going to be removed and moved up here to the high school. We asked them to do so with a plan that the town will have to decide what they're going to do with the property, but the reason for doing so was to try to offset any potential tax burden in the future. Unfortunately, the CPC did not, were not convinced of our application. However, they did say that they would certainly reconsider it again next year, and so the vote ended up being a 5-3 vote at CPC. Tony was with me, as well as Tricia Vinkasey, and it was a very good discussion between the two, and appreciate their consideration, and we'll again file it again next year, presumably for the same reason. And we told them that between now and next year, we'll probably have more specificity with respect to vetting out through the building process and the master building and committee and other committees to take a look at this, as well as more information to the public. Aside from that, I think that
So
pretty
did
much
they
summarized
hear
it.
all their articles? All petitioners were there for CPC articles, or just a few?
There were a few. I'm not sure if they were all.
Everybody? Yeah, I think
They
so.
were, was it everything, so they listed it all. So
voted
it's
on
coming.
everything last
So it's
night.
coming to us at our next meeting.
Okay.
Yep, we got her summary today, and Lorraine already has it for the packet.
Well, that was pretty much the summation of it.
Yep.
All right, so now we are actually, I see it says adjournment and signing of documents. So we're not going to adjourn. We're actually going to go into executive session, folks, and then we will adjourn after that. And the reason is that we're going to be discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and that is with respect to the fire union. As any discussion concerning bargaining, collective bargaining, or litigation, if open to the public meeting, would have a detrimental effect on the public body, and so therefore I am declaring that our discussion will be held in executive session because it's related to collective bargaining on a union contract, and that is with the fire department. So, at that point, I would appreciate having a motion and actually a roll call. So if I could get a motion and then a roll
We
call.
need to adjourn the regular meeting first?
We'll do it at the
We'll
end.
do it at the end of the executive session. We will not come back into public session, folks.
Gotcha.
Move to, isn't there a specific wording, or should I just move to go to executive session in regards to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, as the chair so declares.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr.
Lorraine, can we
Harris?
have
Yes.
a roll call? Or, sorry?
Sorry, Lorraine, go ahead.
Mr. Danahy?
Yes.
Mr. Vignani?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Curran?
Yes.
Good night.